Hey everybody, happy Friday. It's JJ and we're back again for another ASUS PCDIY hardware show. We've got a lot of things to talk about. Hopefully you guys are ending up your week on a positive and productive footing. Hey, Oliver, I saw you there waiting out in terms of the chat. So thanks so much for joining us in terms of the PCDIY stream. And also looks like we've got Prajit Gaming. Also, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Hey, TC. 5302. Also, thanks for joining us on the stream. Appreciate it so much. So, overall, guys, happy Friday to you guys. Hopefully everybody is going to be wrapping up everything on a positive and productive footing. We've got a pretty good amount of things to be able to go ahead and jump into in terms of a few kind of different product announcements. We've got some new UEFI announcements for those of you that are on 12th gen C690 series motherboards that we're going to be talking about a little bit. An actual cool giveaway that we're actually running right now in conjunction with Linus. So we'll talk about that. Some cool partner updates, and of course, a continuation for 2022 in terms of the ASUS PCDIY Builder Spotlight, where we've got some fantastic builds again to be able to show off. And as always, if you guys are interested in checking out, well, not checking out, but ultimately submitting your build to be able to be featured here on the PCDIY live stream, make sure to go ahead and submit your builds. All you have to do is check out our PCDIY group. I'm going to link that right now in the chat for you guys, and you can go ahead and submit your builds so that we can feature them here on the stream. Looks like we had a couple more people pop in there. Hey, Ryan, thanks for joining us here on the stream. Richard, thanks for joining us. Hey, Erica, happy to have you here. Always good to see you here on the stream as well. Hey, Robert. ROG, are you going to be making a laptop with a 12900 and a 3090? So in this stream, we don't generally cover pretty much any of our system related products. We do have our ROG Pulse actually live stream, which covers some of our ROG product portfolio for both our systems products and for our desktop products. But in the not too distant future, we'll actually be expanding to have our systems live stream, which I'll be kind of giving you a lot of the latest and greatest that's going on for ASUS's system related product. Although we are going to have it probably be a little bit more focused on some of our general consumer product line, a lot of our other product series like ProArt, VivoBook, ZenBook, even to a degree kind of TUF Gaming, where we don't generally have as much visibility on those series as we do on our ROG series. But we've launched a lot of new products, are going to be launching a lot of new products, especially in the laptop space for 2022, if you saw our recent CS 2022 announcement. So just make sure to go ahead and keep it tuned to our social media channels if you're interested on any of the new models that we're going to be coming out with, whether you're talking about the G15, the Flow, the Zephyrus, or a wide number of the different models that we've got, because definitely for 2022, there's going to be a lot of laptop updates. All right. So, hey, Tim, happy to have you here. Thanks for joining us on the stream. And Connor, thanks for joining us also here on the stream as well. All right. So let's. Oh wait, just opened up a package with an ROG STRIX 3070 Ti. Super excited. Fantastic, Adam. That's a really sweet card. Really, it's going to be awesome. Best of luck to you, man, when it comes to the installation. Make sure to go ahead and load up your GPU Tweak 3, whatever it might be, to be able to, take advantage of course, all the monitoring, the tweaking, tuning. If you want an easy kind of additional overclock on top of the out-of-box vBIOS programmed overclock, you can use the actual OC setting that we offer inside of GPU Tweak. It's essentially like an internally validated overclock that we've tested that generally works for the vast majority of cards. It's not generally guaranteed, but it's a nice little bump up that you can quickly go ahead and apply to your card if you're looking for even a little bit more performance. But keep in mind, those cards are already going to be cooler, quieter, and faster than the Founders Edition cards by quite a bit. So it's not necessarily something you have to do, but a lot of enthusiasts that are looking to get a little bit more, it's a good way to go ahead and just push up your cards performance just a wee bit more. All right, so let's go ahead and get ready to jump into things here. First things foremost, I want to go ahead and talk about a few UEFI announcements just to get these out of the way, and then we're going to talk about some cool updates that we've had. So most of the UEFI updates are going to be in relation to Z690 series motherboards. There are going to be some in there for also B660 and a couple of other boards. I'll be posting these a little bit later today in the ASUS PCDIY group. So if you're looking for the entire list of boards, I think it'll probably be, I don't know, maybe around 40 to 50 motherboards or something like that. I don't forget the entire total number in terms of the list, but most of the other boards I would consider are going to be what I refer to as mature UEFI releases. So they're not critical or kind of really a UEFI release that you really need to be cognizant of. But with Z690 still being an early kind of platform, there can sometimes be additional performance benefits, new feature benefits, and a couple of other things. But this update specifically does include quite a number of new items. So I want to go ahead and just kind of jump into it a little bit and talk a little bit about some of the things that can be included in a UEFI update. So let me go ahead and bring up a board reference for here, and we will show you kind of exactly what I'm talking about here. So let me go ahead and share my screen. and we will take a look. So if we take a look here, this is the RG Maximus Z690 formula. This actually UEFI update is going to apply to pretty much almost all of the Z690 series motherboards that we've released. But all you would need to do is essentially head over to the support tab. Once you head over to the support tab, you're going to want to head over right here to drivers and tools. Once you're at drivers and tools, head over to this section right here, BIOS and firmware, and then you will see that you actually have the corresponding update. Now, the important thing that you're going to want to see is right here. It tells you actually a few pieces of critical information. So you see right there that it tells you it helps to improve stability and interoperability with Windows 11, updates USB PD firmware. So on many of our actually newer motherboards on Z690, we introduced an advanced new quick charging functionality, which is actually a USB PD protocol, which essentially just allows for a higher level of power to be actually distributed through the USB-C if you're looking to be able to take advantage of quick charging for certain types of devices. So we've done some optimization, some tuning, so you might benefit from that. Probably the more critical one is the Intel ME firmware. Intel's management engine firmware is kind of a underlying firmware code that does a lot in terms of optimizations and improvements to the way that the CPU works. It can be security-based, it can be performance-based, it can be relating to a number of different parameters. But generally, I usually do recommend MEI firmware be applied to your system just to be able to ensure kind of the overall best experience. Do keep in mind, though, that if you've got an overclock dialed in, you're happy with the performance of the system, everything is working really well, that by applying an actual MEI firmware update, you can actually cause your current settings to no longer potentially be stable because it can change underlying what are called auto rules and other kind of operating parameters. So it's not a requirement. If your system is running great, you don't have any issues, don't update the UEFI, and you're entirely fine to run it with the current build you have. But just keep in mind that if you do update this, you may have to go back and maybe do retraining if you're utilizing our ASUS AIOC technology, or if you've manually tuned it, you may have to go back in and manually tune things. You'll also see that there's an update there in terms of the firmware for the overall Intel microcode, and that aligns with the ME firmware that I talked about. Some further improvements and enhancements to DRAM compatibility. Although for the most part, especially I think after the second UEFI release that first came out for Z690, overall DDR5 interoperability and DDR4 interoperability are quite solid. So it's not too much of an issue, but just keep that in mind. So you'll see essentially these updates rolling out. Pretty much they're all active as of right now. And that's pretty much all I needed to kind of touch on today for those UEFI announcements. And again, if you're interested in finding out the entire list, along with a lot more information regarding kind of UEFI updating, make sure to check out the link to the PCDIY group. And you'll see that there's actually a featured announcement post that has a lot of FAQ information that I have broken down, and it should get you covered. But with that, let me go ahead and check and see if we just have any questions in that regard before we get over to our next topic. Hey, Yiga, happy Friday. Happy to have you here. Hey Todd, yeah, these ROG Ryogen coolers are really awesome. Do keep in mind that we do have a little bit more of a cost-aggressive model with the Ryu, which is going to be a little bit of a smaller first-generation screen-based design, and we also still have the ROG Strix LC series, which have a really cool MVCM finished, which gives you kind of like a chrome appearance. It doesn't have a customizable display, but still a really cool-looking cooler. So we try to offer kind of a range of different options for different price points. Okay. Hey, Kevin, happy to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us from the stream. Hey, Todd, if you're running the Z590, this won't apply to you. This firmware update, the UEFI specifically, is specific to Z690 series motherboards, so you don't have to worry about that. And again, already with Z590, while it's still a fairly new platform, at this point, I would consider it and classify it as what's called a mature platform. Generally, after about usually I'd say 4 to about 6 updates, you generally start to reach a pretty good level of board maturity. And definitely after about 12 to 14 months, boards usually kind of shift into what we would refer to more as a general kind of maintenance stage. So it's usually not very critical to have to kind of really be aggressive at updating the UEFI, especially if you're not changing hardware, you're not changing other parameters of your system. Most releases that you usually see after that time frame are usually conditional. So they might be specific to a new type of component coming out of the market, and we need to maybe patch in patch and support, or it could be that maybe we're fine-tuning certain performance mechanisms, or it could be maybe we're updating like the Aura RGB controller on the motherboard. So there are kind of sometimes subtle aspects, but it's not something you would have to really worry about. Hey, check out my build. I will definitely make sure to go ahead and check it out, man. And if you've got it submitted for the PCDIY Builder Spotlight, I don't think I saw one for the selections that I did yesterday, but definitely make sure to keep in mind that, I do this every Friday. So we'll definitely be taking a look in the not too distant future, hopefully to your build. Okay. Hey, Raphael, happy birthday, man. Best wishes to you and yours, man. And hopefully this year brings you happy health and fortune, man. So take care. All right. Hey, Mark, as of right now, there are no plans for a Ryujin 2 White Edition, but we do have an ROG Strix LC White Edition, and we are also going to be updating the ROG Strix LC2 in white. So we will have you covered if you're looking for a white version of an AIO from ASUS. All right, so let's go ahead and get to our next update that we've got here. So first one's going to be, I think, a pretty cool one. Back in, I think, the end of 2021 with the launch of the Z690 based chipset and 12th Gen series CPUs, ASUS really being the industry leader in terms of, overclocking, board-oriented design, and having really the best kind of partnerships in the industry. We're always kind of pushing the performance envelope. We set the DDR5 world record, and we've gone ahead and broken it again. So we're really excited to be able to go ahead and kick off essentially a whole nother level in terms of what we're seeing from DDR overclocking. So let's go ahead and take a look right here. So you'll see this actually post from our friends over there at G-Skill. This was essentially a little bit of a collaboration project between the ROG performance team along with G-Skill. And you can see right here that it was a very impressive essentially reach. So 888 mega transfers was essentially reached here on this. So it's truly impressive when you think about that. The baseline frequency of what is possible right now with DDR5 is 4,800. And now we're essentially nearing essentially almost 9,000. This level of scaling has never historically been seen within a first generation of a memory platform. If you take a look back at DDR4, while DDR4 has scaled very impressively over time, that type of scaling wasn't seen within the first generation. And so unquestionably, the really cool thing that I'm seeing is I can tell you I've been in this industry now for, close to about 20 years, and the maturity that actually I'm seeing out of not only the scaling for frequency, the overall stability, and the overall experience is quite good. And it's going to continue to improve in terms of interoperability, scaling, efficiency, so many other aspects as, Intel partners, us, everybody continues to kind of fine tune the overall process. But the fact that essentially in such a short period of time, we've been able to go from essentially that entry level benchmark frequency, right, all the way up to this frequency is really, really impressive. This was achieved on our Maximus Z690 Apex board. So this is our overclocking centric board. All of our ASUS Z690 ROG boards especially are going to be able to give you a great DDR5 overclocking experience. You are going to be able to see generally routinely, even though overclocking is never guaranteed, generally I would say between, probably 5,600 to 6,200 megahertz on most 12th gen series CPUs. After about that 6,200 megahertz level, you'll start to see a little bit of what's called a diminishing silicon variance. And so what we mean by that essentially is that if you kind of took 10 CPUs, the memory controller, which is part of the CPU, isn't necessarily always guaranteed to be able to run at certain frequencies. So there may be some CPUs that could run at that frequency and other ones that won't be able to run at that frequency. But the board topology along with the memory kits are there to essentially allow you to attempt that, if you're an overclocking enthusiast and you're looking to really kind of push up the envelope. But this was really exciting to be able to go ahead and achieve. You can see kind of the rest of the information there. I will go ahead and link this in the chat. But overall, very, very cool to be able to see what was realized in terms of this. This is the actual additional thing that I also wanted to talk about, which is that G-Skill is also releasing 6400 CL32, so essentially lower latency memory for the DDR5. So this is going to definitely be on the higher end side in terms of kind of enthusiasts. If you're really looking for that higher frequency and that tighter timing set, it's going to be a very nice option for you. Let me go ahead and bring up here, lastly, the world record information. So I can share that with you guys, and I will drop that in the chat. And again, if anybody has any questions, also make sure to jump into that. So give me a second there. There we go. And you can see right here. So the same picture, different set of kit, but you'll see right there, there's the Apex board, 2 DIMMs, just because really with DDR5 as of right now, the best experience possible is going to be, of course, with the 2 DIMM configuration versus a 4 DIMM configuration. Keep in mind that even though within a 2 DIMM configuration, density and rank always matters. So that essentially means, amount of memory that you have. So let's say a 2 by 16 gigabyte kit versus a 2 by 32 gigabyte kit is going to yield different levels of overclocking frequency. You're not going to be able to overclock a 2 by 32 kit to the same degree as you are going to be a 2 by 16 kit. So imagine like, 2 by 16 being like, well, 2 by 8 probably being all the way up here, 2 by 16 being here, and then 2 by like 32 being here, and then even like 4 DIMM being down here. So it comes down. So the memory controller is quite impressive, but definitely always as you essentially increase density, you increase rank, you're going to bring down the frequency. It's just the reality of the way that it works because you're adding more stress and complexity to what is going to be possible. We also do want to go ahead and make sure to call out Lupin No, who's the actual overclocker that helped to actually achieve the results. So kudos to him. And again, kudos to our ROG performance engineering team, as well as G-Skills for being able to go ahead and offer some amazing kits that were able to reach these new results. So overall, very, very cool. So let me see if we got any questions right there. Looks like... I was told that Ryzen is more dependent on true latency. There's no true latency. Latency can be measured in quite a number of different aspects, whether you're talking about kind of the buses that you have in terms of like a chipset linked bus as opposed to a CPU linked bus, or you could be talking actually about, cache, or you could be talking about RAM in conjunction to working with the CPU. There's lots of different latencies within an actual system itself. As far as sensitivity or relevancy, latency is always going to be relevant. Of course, the lower, the better, but there is always a balancing act too. A big thing that people actually really kind of don't necessarily understand is that one of the reasons why you want to actually go to DDR5 in the first place is it's about actually affording much more bandwidth. There's something that's actually called same bank refresh, which actually changes the way that memory can actually be accessed in relation to DDR5 to DDR4 that allows it to be more efficient. And that's a critical part of the overall way that it's been designed, but critically also because it offers actually significantly more bandwidth. Bandwidth is important for multi-core and multi-thread based processor design because you're essentially sharing the memory to essentially all those different cores and threads. And as you increase your density, and you have more memory available to work with your CPU, you want also that bandwidth to be able to supply there, especially as you start to have what's called parallelism, right? You start to actually have a lot of things that are being run across multiple cores. This is actually where it can be challenging to benchmark things. And sometimes people think, DDR5 might not make a performance difference. And it actually very much depends on the application. And some applications that really rely on not only multiple threads, but can leverage that bandwidth, you're not even talking about like a 5% or 10% increase, which would be like a nominal increase from one generation to another generation. You could be seeing 25, you could be seeing 50% plus performance increases. I've seen this, from everything from different types of science and simulation workflows to actually improvements with ultra high refresh rate gaming. So we're not talking about kind of general, 120 hertz, 144 hertz, 165 hertz gaming. We're talking about 240, 280, 360 hertz, and even higher. That's where you can start to see more benefits. We've seen some interesting information also from, applications that heavily rely on decompression and compression, digital audio workstations, actually, in terms of doing a high number of what's called parallelism. So a lot of this at the end of the day really just depends on your platform, what you're doing with it. But the great thing is that, with Z690, you've got flexibility. You can go both ways. You can go with the tighter memory kits as you want. You can go with higher frequency. You can go with DDR4. You can go DDR5. Pick what's going to work best for you based on your budget, your preference, and even availability, right? So a lot of different interesting elements to be able to play around with that. Okay, so just see right here. So Connor's asking, do you think that most 12900K CPUs will be able to run CL32-6400? In our testing, the last, I think, update, I would want to go back and double check with our performance R&D team and see what their latest update measurements is as we've started to do more sampling with mass production-based CPUs. But generally, we were seeing almost, I'd say, about a 90% threshold marker for 6,000 megahertz operation. So that essentially means that, close to maybe about 85, 90% plus of CPUs in the 12th gen series, we're going to be able to reach essentially 6,000 megahertz. While for 400 megahertz doesn't seem like a lot. That would historically to me seem like there would probably start to be a little bit of a diminished delta. I'd still say it would probably be a higher percentage, so probably still over definitely 50%, but that can still be quite a bit of a drop off. So it's not necessarily a guarantee. There may be some kind of tuning and optimization that we might be able to do to be able to maximize that, and that's definitely only going to be possible within 2 DIMM configurations. But I think that it will definitely be more likely than less likely, but I wouldn't necessarily guarantee at this point that it's going to probably be, I'd say, upwards of 75%. But we'll definitely check back with our team and see if I can give you a little bit more kind of updates. I know I wanted to post this actually announcement from G-Skill in the group, so I'm waiting on getting a little bit additional updates to see what we're seeing in terms of likelihood percentage for that 6400 megahertz frequency, because I think that's going to kind of probably be the enthusiast high-end kind of sweet spot. It's definitely a little bit more of a pricey kit. I think it's right now I'm seeing probably about like a $25 to about $45 swing. But if 75-80% of CPUs could hit it and you've got the budget for it, why not jump into that? Because you're going to get that high frequency and that tight timing set. Do keep in mind though that if you guys go back and check out our update that, our live stream that we showed about our AMP technology and DDR5 boards, it showed you that we could actually get very impressive frequencies from entry-level kits of memory and even with tight timings. So I think I showed, with this kit right here, this was a, fairly basic 4800 megahertz kit, and I was able to show this kit being able to do 6000 megahertz, and I think it was CL 36, might have been even 32. I'd have to go back and double check the stream, but it then comes down to the balancing act, right? Of course, if that's still overclocking, so it might not 100% be guaranteed. And then there's also still, whether you like the aesthetics of having like a really nice kit, which has a nice heatsink and has, RGB, or whether you're okay with something that looks a little bit more simple. But you can also get memory heat spreaders too, right? So a lot of different options there. Okay, so let's jump into our next piece of news. I'll also drop that link there in the chat for people if they want to check that out. Okay. So that has now been dropped in the chat there also. And let's go ahead and take a look at another piece of partner news. So our friends over at EK have been busy. They are what we refer to pretty much like as a kind of key partner, and they work very, very closely with us on a lot of different projects. Of course, on our Z690 series motherboards, they're a close partner in terms of the design and development of the water cooling solutions that we have on, let's say, the Formula motherboard, as well as on the Glacial motherboard. And of course, we've worked with them in terms of having things like our EKWB edition graphics cards. And of course, they're always a leading partner with us to be able to develop water block support for our motherboards as well as for our graphics cards. And we're really excited that they are essentially now announcing, I believe for pre-order, their new Vector series water blocks. These have been kind of really designed from the ground up to be able to offer not only outstanding performance, but a really tight level of integration in terms of just how the assembly comes together and the overall design in terms of how it not only offers cooling to the primary topology of the board, so the top level portion, so the GPU, the PCB, the VRM, the memory, but the rear of the card, and actually all kind of containing that together to be able to bring a better thermal distribution across the entirety of the card and have it look really, really clean. Some beautiful blocks. Of course, DRGB integration, which can directly be interfaced with our motherboards for ASUS Aura Sync lighting support. You're going to have different material choices, of course, the active backplates, the terminals, and of course their EK Matrix 7, which is essentially just their new initiative to kind of simplify and standardize kind of where all the connection points are within a loop to be able to kind of make things a little bit more practical and easy. But beautiful blocks, and you'll be able to get these for essentially the high-end series for 30 series cards. So this would be for like the 3080, 3080 Ti, 3090 class series graphics cards. So I will drop this in the chat on the pre-orders. I think are live right now, and they'll probably be shipping out probably sometime closer towards the end of Q1 timeframe, I would expect. But we do have an EK rep in our PCDIY group, or of course you can reach out to them through their social media channels if you guys are interested in finding out a little bit more about that. And some people also kind of always ask, like, what are the differences between kind of ASUS graphics cards? So like between ROG Strix and TUF Gaming and Dual and KO. So that is actually kind of one of these things that it's not always clear, but ROG Strix are essentially our tier 1 partner-based cards. So we work very, very aggressively to coordinate with partners like EK, Fantech, Bits Power, Thermaltake, Alpha Cool, so many different partners to be able to have water block support specifically for STRIX cards. So if you want to cool graphics cards, not only are the STRIX cards really designed and developed to be able to have an outstanding overclocked experience, or even just high performance experience, because they're going to have higher clock speeds, higher TGP, higher TBP, essentially power designs, but they're also going to generally pretty much always have water block support. Well, let's say if you got like a dual card, or you got a TUF gaming card, although some of the TUF cards can sometimes get block support, it's not necessarily going to be a guarantee. So that's kind of an advantage, that if you're a water cooling enthusiast, the STRIX cards are going to have that almost pretty much guaranteed level of water block support. Okay, so we got our UEFI updates. We got our G-Skill announcement. Oh, and we got one more over here. So let me get that out of the way, and I'll double check them to see if we've got any other updates. But I thought this one was a pretty interesting one, because this is something that, of course, came about with the launch of Z690, and that was going to be PCI Gen 5. So as of right now, we don't have any PCI Gen 5 devices, right? There's no graphics cards, there's no SSDs, but that's going to soon be changing. So Team Group, another ASUS premier partner, has gone ahead and announced that they will be updating their essentially SSD lineup to be able to offer PCI Gen 5. So this is that next level of performance, and you'll be able to find out a little bit more information right here. And the real big part right there is, while I'm not, of course, always focused on sequential, I really care about IOPS. I care about lower Q depth performance, the controller and architecture, because that's really actually what translates to kind of the performance benefits that you might see. One of the really big benefits of PCI Gen 5 is going to be, of course, even more bandwidth. And here you're jumping up, as you can see, the performance of this drive, 13,000 megabytes, right? 13 gigs on the write, and then 12. It looks, 13 on the read, and then 12 on the write. So some pretty just monstrous numbers. These are the type of numbers that before you really had to actually have like a RAM disk to be able to achieve. So it's really impressive to be able to see this. So again, kudos, and we're going to, I'm sure, be seeing a lot more of these in the not too distant future as we move further and further into 2022. So pretty cool. All right, let me go ahead and just see if we got any questions right here. Yeah, some games like low latency more than bandwidth, very much so. That's actually very much the same as it is with, let's say, core count, right? So if you take a game like, let's say, Far Cry, as opposed to, let's say, like Total Warhammer has actually been designed, because it has a lot of instances and AI calls. It will actually use a lot of a multi-threaded processor. So it would benefit not only from the IPC and actually a higher core clock across all cores, but Far Cry, for instance, won't really care so much about a lot of cores, and it will care more so about actually frequency across a lower number of cores. This is why we actually also always advocate for per core overclocking, as opposed to what some people do, which is an all-core overclock, because an all-core overclock will generally limit your performance and won't give you the benefits across both type of applications, right? Multi-threaded as well as lightly threaded applications. Hey, Rio, if you could give me a little bit more context to your question, what is the hotspot? If you mean kind of like maybe what's the sweet spot in terms of DDR5 memory, then I can try to see if I can give you some insight into that. Otherwise, I'm not sure right there. Hey, Caitlin, thanks for your feedback. Feel free to go ahead and drop your actual thoughts in the ROG Armored Crate forum. It is actually monitored by our dev team, but I'll tell you, if you actually take a look, most users that are generally running a clean OS environment with without other types of RGB mixed applications, are generally having a stable and reliable experience. I've been using builds pretty much consistently over the last 2 years, from 3.5 all the way to now the current 5.x release, and overall the functionality, stability, and interoperability has been quite solid in terms of the overall experience. There's always going to be areas to keep improving on in terms of kind of interoperability and compatibility, and it's especially challenging when you're doing a mixed ecosystem, so you're kind of interfacing it with IQ or NZXT CAM or other applications, as there could be codependencies that can cause problems. But for the most part, pretty much most of the current generation builds have been pretty feature stable, but definitely if you have specific feedback, make sure to check out the ROG Armory Crate forum, and you can drop your feedback specifically in the version thread sticky that's available there, and our dev team can hopefully take a look at your feedback and see if they can improve upon whatever it is you're wondering about. All right, so let me go ahead and see if we got any more questions there. If not, we'll jump into some other points. Hey, Masar. Thank you so much. Very cool to have you there. All right, so let me go ahead and see what we got next here. um, okay, we covered our PCI Gen 5 SSDs. That's good. All right, so next up, let's see. Let's go ahead and yeah, take a look. I think here at this little announcement that we've got. So we did go ahead and team up here with actually Linus. So if you guys are aware, we do have a couple of HDMI 2.1 monitors. And one of these includes the actual TUF Gaming HDMI 2.1 enabled monitor. So that's the VG248UQ-L1A, I believe. And we can see that right here. So essentially, we came up with this cool little contest right here. I will link this in the chat. There's also a video that will actually give you a little bit of an overview on this monitor. It's a really well-spec'd monitor in terms of if you're looking for something that's color accurate, has high refresh rate, solid response, ergonomics, and you're really just kind of looking to be able to step up from maybe, let's say, you know, if you got 1080p or maybe you got 1440p and you want to jump up to 4K. It's really well balanced. And of course, with the HDMI 2.1, while it's not really as critical as some people make it to be when it comes to console requirements, because most consoles that need essentially more bandwidth, it's a catch-22 because most of the games that are running generally 120 hertz are doing so usually at 1080p or like an adaptive checkerboard resolution. So it's not 4K at 120 hertz. So in most instances, actually, you really only need HDMI 2.0 B, and that would be a more enough bandwidth to be able to supply the 1080p 120 hertz. But in selective scenarios, if you want to, of course, fully take advantage of that, then you would need the HDMI 2.1 specification. So, you know, ultimately, the best thing is always to take a look at what it is you're trying to achieve. Do you have to jump up to something like this monitor, or can you jump over to another monitor and still get that experience that you want on, let's say, either the desktop, the laptop, or the console that you're looking for, whatever it might be. But the cool thing is here, all you guys need to do to be able to get essentially entered into this to be able to win this monitor is going to be essentially just socially retweeting, and then there's essentially it's a meme challenge. So you see right there, there's a little bit of a green screen, so you just have to go in and essentially come up with your different memes that you might have that you want to go ahead and fill in. As you see there, we've got quite a different kind of people that have gone ahead and jumped in to be able to contribute to that and try that out. It's going to be running, I believe, until February. So if you're interested in trying to win a ASUS 4K HDMI TUF Gaming monitor, go ahead and check out that link, and you know, best of luck to you. It is also an international based giveaway. So historically, many of the giveaways that we do in North America are going to be regionally limited because we have to adhere to legal law requirements that vary between not only the United States and Canada, but there's also, of course, other factors that we have to keep in mind. But in some situations, we're able to do international. So you can see that right there. So overall, pretty cool. All right, let me see if we got any other questions right there. Curious about high performance graphics cards, especially being quiet. Not sure exactly what you mean there, Matthew. If you can go ahead and maybe detail that a little bit more, whatever you might be asking about, feel free and go ahead and do so. And I'll do my best to go ahead and fill you in. So with that, let's go ahead and just jump into a couple of availability and release updates. Essentially, some of these products I've talked about in some recent streams. So we've got some new MSRP pricing, and essentially these products are going to be coming in the not too distant future. So I just want to be able to touch on these quickly. So the first one here, let's go ahead and get these out of the way. Yeah. You see here is going to be the TUF Gaming Z690 Plus. So we already, of course, have this version of this motherboard out and available with DDR4, but we will, this is the DDR4 version, but we will be offering a DDR5 version of this same motherboard. So the MSRP for the TUF Gaming DDR5 version, I believe, is going to be $299. Let me go ahead and double check that. Yes, it will be $299. So if you're looking essentially for now the TUF Gaming version, but a DDR5 version, then we're going to have you covered in the not too distant future. Probably going to be looking towards availability. I'd probably say sometime in middle of February, maybe towards the end of February. You know, logistics, it's always a little bit of a tricky kind of situation to 100% know how that's going to play out. And again, let me just go ahead and show you guys here. This is the exact board that I'm talking about. There'll be the DDR5 version, but it's got a fantastic core feature set. Really, probably the main differentiating feature, although there's quite a number of them as you go over to the ROG Strix, will be that the ROG Strix are going to give you AIOC technology, a further upgraded audio design with Supreme Effects audio-based design. You're also going to get the really Q release design implementation to be able to eject your graphics card. And there's also going to be a little bit of improvement in terms of the I/O, but keep in mind this is already going to come with, you already get USB 3.2 internally with the Type-C connector. You're going to also, of course, have rear Type-C. You're going to have Wi-Fi applicable if you get the Wi-Fi version. You're going to have 2.5 gigabit LAN. So it's not like you're really compromising on it. It's just that you're getting even more connections on the Strix version of the board. But a great choice, again, if, like I said, you're going to be looking for maybe saving a little bit. And also, you don't necessarily maybe need to take advantage of that. Oh, really cool. Looks like I got an update here. I know that we were getting it in soon, but one of actually my team members here is letting me know that if you guys do check essentially e-tailers, we are essentially working to ramp up essentially the availability for the Maximus Z690 Hero. So it was essentially removed in terms of availability as we worked through essentially resolving any of the issues that we had with the initial production, and now we're essentially all good to go. So in that regard, if you're interested in picking up the Maximus Z690 Hero, which still for me is going to be really, I think, our benchmark best option for those of you looking for a high-tiered board that really has kind of a standing feature set, the Hero board is going to be a fantastic choice for you, and it should be showing up online. Let me go ahead and double check. I can see maybe if it's gone ahead and already been listed. Last time I checked, it had not been. But if you probably check over, like I said, the next 2 weeks or so, you should start seeing pop up at a number of different e-tailers. Let me check here. Let's see if it is there. If it is up there, guys, I will go ahead and link that in the chat for you. Oh, it is. It is already up. So very, very cool. So let me go ahead and drop that in the chat. So it is back in stock, guys. I know a couple people have been asking. So there it is right there. If you are interested in picking up the Maximus Z690 Hero, it is back in stock. So you're good to go. So I will drop that in the chat for you guys, and you will be good to go. All right. Let me see if we got any questions there. Right now, no additional updates on whether or not we're going to have a Chakram core, Chakram X core, but as always, just make sure to keep it tuned to the group with any type of updates. Yeah, so that's a really good question. So I build a PC designed for quiet behavior. So if you're looking really for kind of the quietest level experience, our Noctua series graphics card is outstanding. It's very, very quiet. But the reality is that all of our graphics cards with TUF Gaming series as well as the ROG Strix series are designed to be cooler and quieter than the Founders Edition graphics card. And we have usually actually a dB target. We even actually have a specialized switch. There's actually a VBIOS switch right here that will even actually further tune the fan profile to a further kind of quiet profile if you're looking for even a lower level of fan operation by default. I'll tell you that if you're looking for a very, very quiet experience, the TUF Gaming cards and the ROG Strix cards do have a very quiet level of operation. Now, depending on what your use case scenario is, it might be that you might be a little bit better focused at targeting kind of the balance in terms of how high end of a card you go. I think kind of the sweet spot in terms of high end performance to thermal output to acoustics is going to be the 3070. The 3070 cards, whether it's going to be the TUF Gaming or the RG Strix cards, are very quiet, and you can even actually further quiet them down a little bit more through manual tuning of the fan curve or through even certain adjustment that you might make through the clock profiles. I'll lastly also note that keep in mind that our cards do support the 0 dB fan operating technology, and essentially just what that means is that these fans, right, when the system is underneath a certain power load, so generally that's going to be, I believe, 55 watts, and also the actual load for the graphics card is underneath a certain temperature marker, these fans won't even spin. So essentially the card doesn't produce any noise. There may be potential emissive load noise from the card itself, which might be very, very minor. But in most situations, that's going to be a very, very quiet experience. So that would be my recommendation, is either the TUF Gaming series or the ROG Strix series. Okay. All right. So that is going to be for the TUF Gaming Z690 Plus, like I said, coming out in the not too distant future, and also that update there on the Maximus Hero board. So another update is going to be for the ASUS IPMI card that we talked about in, I think, last week's stream or maybe 2 streams ago. And the big update there essentially with that card is going to be that it offers an advanced way to be able to essentially have kind of remote access to your system, but in a really cool way, because essentially you'd be able to go ahead and monitor key operating parameters for your system. You could go ahead and make adjustments to the fans if you have the fans connected to the card. You're going to also be able to shut down, restart the system. So it's definitely, I'd say, a more advanced level feature. It's not going to be for every single user because, of course, not every single user is going to need hardware level support in terms of access to their system. But if it is something that you are kind of looking for, that card is going to be available in the not too distant future, and the MSRP is going to be $140 for that card. Let me go ahead and see if I can bring up the images for it. Yeah, I've got them right here. So we talked about this, and again, if you want a little bit more information, just go ahead and check out the prior stream that we have on demand. You can check it out on Facebook, on YouTube for it, but this is going to be the IPMI card. So it'll plug into a slot. There's corresponding cables that do need to be connected to the motherboard and a corresponding UEFI update. These are all the headers here for the supplemental fans if you want to have that low-level advanced support. And there's the, of course, network jack. And this will have two different level interfaces. It has a web-based interface, and then it even has a lower level direct interface that you can see actually that's run directly from the card itself. So this is a true what's referred to as out-of-band management card. So normally this would be the type of function that would be available to you like on a workstation or a specialized server to be able to low-level access the system. The way I look at it is that if you maybe have a very high-end system, maybe a water-cooled system, maybe you've got a system that you're running extended rendering on, and you kind of want to go away and you still want to know how your system's running, how it's operating, how it's working. This is a great way that you could kind of connect to your system, check its temperatures, check the power supply ratings, check the fan speeds, check the kind of operating parameters for the system. You could then shut it down. You could power back on. You could go through that all on a direct hardware level, but not be at your system. So again, not for every single type of user out there, but this is something that, like I said, historically would have only been available to you if you had generally a workstation or server class motherboard with out-of-band management support. Let me see there if we got any questions here. Hey, Geekbench guy, will we see RGB 2.0 soon for the Gen 2 header? So right now, no plans immediately for a new version of the RG Spotlight. It is something our design team is looking at. As far as for the Gen 2 header, that's kind of really dependent on a lot of different partners. Internally on our side, we are looking at maybe having an updated RGB set of accessories that could take advantage specifically of the headers. So that is something that we're looking at evaluating. But as far as kind of the technology and leveraging it, that really comes down to other partners on whether or not they see the benefit of wanting to use more advanced kind of design implementations and LEDs that would take advantage of that second gen header. So we can put the hardware there in place, but we can't necessarily kind of require a manufacturer or partner to be able to develop a set of accessories that adheres to that. On our end, I definitely, as we look to maybe make our own set of additional items, you might then see those directly benefiting from the Gen 2 based implementation specifications. So as always, just make sure to keep it tuned to our group for any kind of announcements that we might have for any types of new accessories that we might be coming out, whether those are eventually our kind of RGB based fans, maybe replacements to the RG terminal, or new LED strips or anything like that that would directly interface and plug into the 2.0 headers on the board. No new plans right now for any new Noctua-based cards, but of course, if we do make an announcement, then the people in the group are going to be the first ones to know. Hey, Evo7, happy to have you here. Thank you so much. All right, so let's go. Next update here is going to be for the VG246H. So this is going to be, I'd say a little bit more of a value-oriented monitor, definitely a little bit lower on the price point. I think this is going to be coming in at an MSRP of 180. Let me go ahead and double check that, guys. Give me 1 second here. Yes, 180 is going to be the MSRP for this model. So this is going to be coming out in the very not too distant future. So a good kind of upgrade if you're just looking to be able to get a replacement monitor that's going to offer you kind of a solid panel in terms of its overall performance specifications, right? So you can see right here, 1080p, IPS, 75 hertz, 1 millisecond NPRP. That's not the same as 1 millisecond gray to gray, so do keep that in mind. It does have our extreme low motion blur, FreeSync certification support, and ergonomics. So this is, I'd say, kind of this like a well-balanced kind of more value-priced oriented monitor monitor in terms of a lower price point, but still having an IPS-based display, good ergonomic adjustments, higher than standard refresh rate option. It's an option there to be able to kind of have, I think, a secondary display, or like I said, if you're a little bit on a lower budget. But keep in mind, though, that we do have quite a number of gaming panels that are a little bit closer, I'd say probably in the mid 200s, that aren't at a too bad of a price point if you're really looking for a higher grade gaming panel that has a higher refresh rate, where you can still get a good panel, good specification performance, but you're probably going to still be looking at about another $50 to $75, and take a look at that within our TUF Gaming lineup. But the VG series definitely has been a very popular series for a lot of users that are looking to kind of maybe upgrade an older monitor. And I still think this set of specifications is a very solid one. So this guy will be coming in the not too distant future. So that is going to be the VG. Next up, we've also got an update on one of our CES announcements that I made there, which is going to be with the BE27ACSBK. This is going to be coming at $399. So the big difference here for this monitor, if you're kind of wondering, is you're going to see right here is actually that it integrates speakers, and then it also integrates a high quality webcam. So it's a 1440p IPS. You can see nice clean borders, right? Full HD webcam, and then has an integrated microphone, and also includes AI noise canceling. So the cool thing with that, right, is that you'll see that if you do a lot of kind of web-based meetings, a lot of chat, it's just going to be a more simplified, clean experience. So if you're not necessarily a gamer, maybe you're a content creator, maybe you're just kind of a general user, you've got your system set up for different purposes, this could be a really nice way to kind of clean up and consolidate your kind of desk setup, because it's all built in, right? You've got the speakers right here, you've got the microphone, and you also have physical buttons, which I really like right here. So here you can see that you can actually make an adjustment to the camera. So you can go ahead and have a privacy shutter. You can make swivel angle adjustments that you want. There's auto face exposure, which helps to compensate for the lighting that you might have. The AI noise canceling is actually hardware based, so you don't have to run any software. So that helps to go ahead and mitigate anything like might be an HVAC, dogs barking, doorbells ringing, anything like that. You have that AI noise canceling technology built in. And the buttons are pretty cool down here because you can actually go ahead and toggle things on. So like you can join the meeting, you can mute. You have essentially kind of an easier level access opposed to having to jump to the keyboard or something like that, that you can just jump in and be able to go ahead and make your connections there. So you'll see right there, volume up and down, microphone on and off, being able to answer the call. So that is a very cool level of functionality. And then of course, USB-C connection will help you to go ahead and get this connected to, let's say, your laptop, and even be able to provide pass-through power, which works really well if you want to simplify the number of cables. So this one will be coming in at $399. There is also, in case somebody is wondering, a smaller version and a little bit lower cost version of this. I believe it's a 24-inch model at 1080p resolution. Okay. So that is going to be the BK. Let me see if we got any questions right there. That's a really interesting concept, Gameaholic. Gameaholic Elite. That's pretty cool. An Animatrix mid tower. So we've definitely been looking at continuing to expand the implementation of Animatrix, as you see, not only on our laptops, but on motherboards, even on our upcoming Flare 2 keyboard, which for those of you that are interested, again, the Flare 2 keyboard is going to start going on sale at the very end of this month or early February, and exclusive to the ASUS eStore online. So do keep that in mind, okay, if you're interested in the Flare 2 keyboard. Right now, I can't tell you about any new of the chassis that we have under design and development, but I can tell you that we've got quite a number of new chassis planned for 2022. So make sure to keep it tuned. You're going to hopefully see some cool stuff from ASUS in 2022 when it comes to our chassis. Okay. Hey, Gabe, no new updates out of what I already provided in previous live streams. So that was already pretty much a confirmation that the 1000-watt will be the first model that we're going to be looking to come out with. And that should hopefully be sometime in maybe late February. And then that will be followed up, I think, by the 1200-watt. And then the 1600 and 850-watt will be the last models, respectively. Those will probably be close to the very end of very end of Q1, if not kind of maybe early Q2 timeframe. So 1000-watt, 1200-watt, 1600-watt, and then last will be the 850-watt. Okay. So let me see what else next here. I think next is, yes, our ZenWiFi. Yep. So this is another Update on the networking side, this is going to be a 2-pack mesh networking solution. So this one will be coming out, and we have a confirmed price point of $329 for this. So this is going to be a little bit different than our traditional kind of router lineup. So this is under our ZenWiFi, which is kind of our general consumer mesh networking product line. So if you're looking essentially for fast, stable, great quality Wi-Fi experience, generally a little bit less physical connectivity on the models, but essentially really focusing on a broader level of coverage. Great choice right here. So this is going to essentially already come with 2 units. So all of our traditional routers already support AI mesh technology, which means you can put 2 routers together to even give you broader coverage if you wanted. But essentially, this is already going to just be coming included inside the box with 2 of these to be able to give you essentially an ultra high level of coverage. To give you a point of reference, one router already in my home, it's approximately about 2,800 square feet, would already cover the entirety, first floor, bottom floor, the front yard, and even to a large degree our backyard, and pretty good coverage even in our garage. And that's only with a single router. So you don't necessarily need mesh to be able to actually cover a large home or even kind of outside home environment. It really comes down to, of course, your environment, the number of walls, and the overall space that you're looking for. Mesh can theoretically actually be slower, and actually in the real world even slower than a traditional single point router, but its real big benefit is going to be generally the stability of the signal, especially at what we call last mile points of coverage. So at your furthest points, you're generally going to have better signal saturation strength and with generally faster speeds than you might have with a single router, which generally actually might offer faster speeds, but maybe within the first 25 to 70% of the coverage range. And that has to do a lot with the number of bands that are exposed. With a mesh networking product, one of the wireless bands is not provided to you because it's used to connect the actual 2 nodes together, essentially the 2 routers together. While with the traditional, let's say dual band or tri-band router, or even now with our quad band routers, you're going to have all those bands available to you to use. Whereas within a mesh network, you don't have that unless you were to wire these with a what's called Ethernet backhaul, which if you've got a home that has Ethernet built into rooms, that's actually a way that you could really get a great level of experience. But you see right here, coverage very, very high. 5,500 square feet, 6+ rooms, 2,750 square feet, 4+ rooms, right? And really great in terms of that overall usage. These all still support a lot of the great feature set that we have on our ASUS routers, and easy setup and monitoring via the ASUS router app. For most people, you can get this probably set up in about 2 to 3 minutes. Very simple. You can control everything. You have Amazon Alexa, Google Assistant if you want to be able to do voice controls. You have advanced monitoring where you can actually check out exactly what's going on the systems. And you also have, critically, quality of service options. So you can go into the app, and if you want to prioritize video on demand, so if you're watching lots of Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, you can prioritize that. If you're doing gaming, you can prioritize gaming. If you're doing a lot of web-based services, then you could prioritize those, and you can do those all on the fly. And even more so, you could also prioritize systems, not just services. So you can really kind of break it down however you're looking for. The last thing I want to touch on here, though, is going to be the connection options, just so you're aware. So let's go over here quickly to our tech specs, and we will take a look right here and show you the connections. So you'll see right here, this is where it's a little bit different than a traditional router. So you've got your 1 WAN connection and then 2 LAN ports and then 1 USB port. Traditionally on standard routers, you're going to have 4 ports, if not even on some of our higher end routers, 8 ports, right? So that's also another difference outside, of course, the speeds that you're going to see, right, within that, right? So now this is also right here going to be the other kind of big part. So you've got AX performance, right? But then you've got this home plug AV2 support. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about this. So the interesting thing here with home plug certification support, right, is essentially you've got your power line technology. And so this is going to essentially give you the ability to kind of use your infrastructure to be able to go ahead and make your active connections and be able to provide a higher level of performance. So if you've maybe found that in certain situations, the wireless rollout hasn't been as beneficial for you, this is where maybe this could be an alternative option for you. And that's always a really challenging kind of situation to know is, are you going to be affected by the environment and, whether or not you kind of just going to a different router, changing up different bands or these different types of scenarios. Ethernet or hardline connection is generally always going to be preferred. So this gives you a little bit more flexibility in terms of kind of giving you a better level of stability and assurance in terms of the connection of that mesh network and then deploying that Wi-Fi based on that. So that is going to be kind of one of those key aspects and why it differs a little bit more. And you can see we've got a whole breakdown right here that helps to give you a little bit more insight in terms of understanding kind of some of the benefits regarding this technology. We'll also have a dedicated stream in the not too distant future, diving a little bit more into home plug, also some coax based technologies that we're going to be releasing in terms of our networking product in the not too distant future. So make sure to keep tuned for that if you guys are interested. Okay. So last but not least, we've got the PCE-AXE58, and I think this is going to be coming in at $79.99. So this is a great solution if you've been looking to be able to jump up to the latest and greatest Wi-Fi specification standard, and you're also running Windows 11. Keep in mind you cannot run Wi-Fi 6E if you're not running Windows 11. Wi-Fi 6 is compatible for Windows 10 and Windows 11, but Wi-Fi 6E is exclusive to Windows 11. Okay, but if you don't have, let's say, one of our motherboards, or you've got an older system still working great, but you're going to maybe upgrade to Wi-Fi 6E and you want to take advantage, or even maybe you just want to upgrade to Wi-Fi 6, but then maybe you'll have support later for Wi-Fi 6E, you could jump into this. And keep in mind, you also get the latest generation Bluetooth with this card too. So if you want to be able to then do pairing with, let's say, a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse or a Bluetooth headset, something like that, you're going to be able to do both with this add-in card. So this will be the PCE-AXE58BT. So very close to the previous 58 model that we had, except this one's the AXE, while the other one was just the AX. So one was Wi-Fi 6, and this one is Wi-Fi 6E, right? And of course, Wi-Fi 6E just gives you that additional band for even higher speed and lower latency, right? Although it does have a little bit of a shorter range, of course, than Wi-Fi 6. Okay. All right, let's see if we got any questions there. And then from there, I think that probably covers most of what we wanted to be able to talk about here in terms of new products. And we'll get ready to jump into the PC DIY Builders Spotlight because we've got some fantastic builds to be able to jump into. So let me go ahead and just double check and see if we've got any questions. Looks like we've got quite a number that came in here. So. Hey, Todd. Fantastic, man. Thanks for joining us. And you have a good evening as well. Make sure to maybe come back and check out our PC DIY Builders Spotlight because we're going to have some awesome builds that we're going to talk about. So if you're looking maybe just to be able to check out some really cool PC builds, hopefully you'll be able to check it out. Let me see here. Hey, Grandmaster, if you're looking to be able to go for a newer build that's 12th gen based, if I missed your comment, we do have the ROG STRIX Z690-A. So that's a DDR4 version, but we're also releasing a DDR5 version of it. So we have you covered if you want to be able to go to an RG-based motherboard and have DDR4 as opposed to DDR5. I really do think DDR5 is worth the investment in terms of not only having higher density, the higher frequency support, and overall really being designed to maximize the architecture. But DDR4 is a proven great high-performing based offering, and definitely from a price standpoint, it's definitely going to be much cheaper, and you can still have an outstanding experience in terms of the overall performance. So, both options are going to get you covered. So check out the ROG Strix Z690-A if you're interested in DDR4. No update yet on the AXE 16000, so make sure to just keep it tuned to the ASUS PCDIY group and the product release calendar. We'll have more information and updates posted in that calendar. I'll generally try to update about every 2 weeks to be able to give an updated timeline as we get that information from our product management team as far as when we're seeing the actual release for any one of the products that we've kind of covered initially at the very beginning of this year in terms of CES announcements, as well as any other new products that I just kind of talk about in general from streams. Those will be updated in the product release calendar. So the last question before we get to the PC DIY Builder Spotlight is, does AI Mesh work if you pair Wi-Fi 5 and Wi-Fi 6 or Wi-Fi 6E? So that gets a little bit complicated. The reality is that you could take a Wi-Fi 5 router and a Wi-Fi 6 router, and if they were both listed on the AI Mesh compatible site, you could put them together and you could have them work, right? But you're always essentially going to be limited to essentially the backhaul speeds based on whatever kind of is the lowest link in the chain. So ideally, you wouldn't want to mix and match from the perspective of performance if you had, let's say, like Wi-Fi 6 and bringing that down with a Wi-Fi 5 based router, right? But a lot of this will depend on what your requirements are for the speed and for the overall effective range. If you have a very high performing Wi-Fi 5 router, so maybe something like an AC88 or something that might have 3 to 4 TRX and RX bands, so still give you very good bandwidth, you could still have quite fast speeds and very, very good coverage. And that could still be more than enough for what you need for the wireless coverage. But yes, you would be limited in terms of kind of not getting the best out of the overall connection of those two routers together. But you can take Wi-Fi 5 and Wi-Fi 6 and mix them together, but you will be essentially bringing them down to operate at a slower kind of speed. So it works based on the lowest common denominator. So ideally, you do want to match the units together, but you do have the flexibility that you can go with different types of router configurations, and you can still get a great experience. It just ultimately comes down to what it is that you need, right? Okay. Looks like that covers us there. Masar, that's actually a good question. Are we going to release the Zen action figure without the Z11? I do believe, I'll double check with our team. We did have plans to release it. Initially, it was going to be an exclusive that was only bundled with the Z11, but the plan was to later release it as an option, as an optional figure that you could purchase, just like the Horseman figure. Okay. All right, guys. I think we're getting ready to jump into the PCDIY Builder Spotlight. Let's go ahead and jump into this. Okay, so I think we got everything right there. Let me just double check. Yep, okay, great. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into our PCDIY Builders Spotlight. So we've got a good number of submissions here today, so we're going to hopefully be able to get through most of them. And again, if you want to get your system essentially featured here in the PCDIY Builder Spotlight, all you got to do is just be part of our PCDIY group. I'm going to drop that link in the chat there again, and you can submit your system. I will generally do this every week, and you can have your system hopefully featured. Okay, it doesn't matter whether it's air cooled, whether it's water cooled, mini ITX or ATX, a first build, or you've built 20 systems. You can go ahead and feel free to submit. We do have a requirement, has to have an ASUS motherboard at a minimum. I am more restrictive at, if you don't happen to have an ASUS and GPU pairing, it's okay. But generally, we're going to, of course, focus generally on ASUS motherboard and GPU pairing configurations, but those are the only kind of quote unquote hardware requirements. It can still be a mix of all kinds of other hardware within the system. So we still do try to give you a lot of flexibility in terms of showing off a different range of builds here. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at our first one. This is going to be from, of course, one of our favorite modders and builders in the community, and that's going to be from Nordic3D. And we've got Blue Frost right here. So if you guys know, he's got a beautiful sensibility and style when it comes to his systems. Definitely, I feel one of the cleanest builds out there. Definitely brings to mind guys like Snef, where you've got a really, I think, sensible and clean layout where sometimes, quote unquote, the thing that comes to mind, right? Less is more. I think he does a really, really great job of that. And thematically, his colors are always usually very, very on point, very consistent type of lighting theme. So let's go ahead and take a look here first at Blue Frost. So beautiful build right here, first and foremost. I mean, I'm loving the overall look right here. We've got the T-Force memory. We've got, of course, the EK block right here. I love the actual soft tubing. This gives us a really nice kind of unique and interesting perspective. I know the trend a lot of times is hardline, and he himself has done tons of hardline builds. I'm still a big fan of soft tubing just because I like the look of it. It's a little bit more kind of I feel fluid and varied in terms of how you can kind of lay it out. It's, of course, simpler, cheaper, and much easier in terms of maintenance. So really, and you still get all the same thermal benefits, right? So, hardline has just become a little bit more of kind of a trend thing. And I'm still just a big fan of soft tubing. So I'm always happy to be able to see it, but definitely both have their place. And at the end of the day, it's PCDIY, so you can go with whatever you want. He's got a prime board here, so that's nice to see. That is a little bit different than maybe the ROG boards normally here. Looks like LAN streamer cables. And then of course we have that GPU in the optimal position, as I will say, horizontally mounted right here. Distro plate right there. And then you can see right there, you've got some lines. So you've got a little bit, actually, these might actually be bends. They might not actually be soft tubes. So looks like Lanyard uni fans right here. Really, really nicely clean done right there. Yeah, those are bends. This is just beautifully done. Now, this is always a challenge here with this type of chassis design because you don't have, of course, quote unquote, a ID, right? There's no front defined aesthetic within this type of chassis. So you really kind of want to use that space to be able to create a strong visual across the across the chassis, right? And so right here, you've kind of used that space really well to be able to read it from left to right, and then also give yourself depth and contrast here, which I think is the big benefit when you go with a horizontal base mount as opposed to a vertical, because the vertical is kind of going to chop everything off. It sometimes can look well if you kind of thematically tie it into the whole system, but sometimes I feel it can actually cut off the way that you look at the build. So I'm really a big fan of this approach right here, where you use this space for depth, right? In contrast, to bring this kind of color scheme through in there. We've got the white reinforced there. We've got some depth and color there. The fans, of course, on the top and bottom with dual rads. And then we got the T-Force drive right there, illuminated just to be able to give a little bit of pop. Just overall beautiful look and feel to the system. It's a fantastic build, and the name's on point. Blue Frost is fantastic. This is definitely my type of build. About the only thing might be a little bit tricky right there is the accessibility for those drives. So that's a little bit of a bummer. It's like, oh man, make sure to get those drives mounted in there. If not, it's a little bit of a challenge. But the good thing is you still have accessibility right here. And I'd love to know where he put the drain port in this build. Where would you run that? I'm always interested to know where the drain ports go. But this is fantastic. Love the overall execution. What do you guys think? I think this is fantastic looking build. Let me go ahead and bring up his submission form here quickly. And we're going to go ahead and take a look right here. Masar, if somebody can go ahead and link him to the Google form for submission, that would be great. If one of you guys can, and if nobody can, hopefully I will make sure to drop the link in the description after the stream ends, Masar, so you could still go ahead and submit your build. Okay, you don't have to actually be part of Facebook to submit, so it is still possible. Okay, so let me go ahead and get that back up here. Okay, so let's see. So got the submission form up here. So yeah, this is from, of course, Soren, Nordic3D. And does the build have a theme? Yeah, white and blue. 3 words to describe the build: clean, bold, and cold. The name of the system is Blue Frost. And let me see if he's got a little bit of a spec list here. So it looks like spec list configuration. This is an 11th gen system, so 11700K on a Prime Z490-A board. That Team Force Extreme memory, 3600 megahertz white ARGB. Then he's got a water cooled 3080 in there, 970 EVO in terms of the actual SSD, along with that 1 terabyte Team Force Delta SSD. An 860 watt power supply in there, and that's all inside of an O11 Dynamics XL. He's got the, of course, very popular Uni fans, the SL120s, and then the radiators are from EK, Coolstream PE and XE. So the XE is the thicker one. That should be the one at the bottom, and then the PE should be the one at the top. And then he's got the Quantum Kinetic, of course, pump and res combo, and then a quantum magnitude for the CPU water block. So very, very nice set of specifications. And right now, even though, of course, you've got newer, of course, hardware out, that's a very, very fast system. Overall budget for the system was $4,800. Most proud aspect is the curved CPU runs. And I would 100% agree. That's the first thing that you're really noticing. These are beautifully routed and super clean, really nicely kind of theme in here. And these satin fittings just look fantastic. And I'll tell you the other thing too is I'm a big fan of this type of approach, where this is what he does really well that's creative, is that sometimes with distro plates, everybody just runs these hard perpendicular lines, and that can look cool, but I sometimes like the creativity of kind of saying, let me throw a bend, let me throw a curve, let me throw something in there to make it kind of look a little bit different. And that's definitely what you see realized here within the build. So definitely a huge amount of credit there in terms of just going with something that is different and distinctive, right? Is there anything that he would change about the build? Different GPU and different GPU block, right? But availability wasn't something that was an option at the time. About 2 weeks to put together. Customer build mainly focuses on MMO gaming, and he really loved the Prime build in this, as far as really kind of helping to set off the look and feel and the foundation for the system. So overall, man, Soren, Nordic3D, thumbs up, man. Another fantastic build. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into our next builder spotlight here. Let's see who we got next up here. See, where do I, sorry. I just set up a new monitor configuration and I'm jumping to the wrong monitor. Oh, all right. Here, Michael Hornback. So yes, Michael Hornback's got a very cool build here. So let's go ahead and throw up our images here. I think his was, if I remember correctly, is called Chernobyl. Yep. All right. So let's take a look here at Michael's system. So Michael's got a very, very cool setup right here. You can see he's got his ASUS monitor. It's an ultra wide, right? He's got his microphone, his speakers, his mouse, keyboard, controller, and then we can see that beautiful system right there, hardline setup over there with that RG board. But let's go ahead and continue this tour here. So very, very cool. So you can see we got a lot, of course, of fans here. We got that classic kind of rainbow synthwave vibe going on. We've got, of course, a flow monitor there, distro in there. Very, very, very cool. So here's a great shot for the build here in terms of the side profile. So we can see right here, we've got an AMD-based board. This is with the Dark Hero in there. This is a cool run that we've got with the CPU, and then we go with the horizontal right angle-based connection. I'm usually always not a fan of hard lines over the memory because I like to see the memory, but I like this type of approach where he went with, of course, pretty much a clear fluid, right? I don't know what the coolant is, whether we're just doing distilled water or essentially a transparent or clear fluid coolant, but you can still see the memory. So I think that's a nice touch. Really clean, tight cable management right here at the top. Of course, we've got that dual fan set up there at the top of the bottom. We've got the strong orientation right there with the distro right there to the right. And then he also did go with a rear mount. And not everybody does that, but it does add a little bit of kind of backfill lighting, which can kind of be kind of cool. The only one negative that sometimes happens right there is that little bit of that kind of splash lighting. An interesting effect that I've seen some people do, that I'd like to have seen some people do, but I haven't seen anybody do it, but I've done it in a couple of my builds in the past, is that I will actually put tape on this side. So the tape will actually block the lighting specifically from here so that this actually is a little bit more pronounced. So it's a cooler way of having that little section just kind of make sure that it gets a little bit more of a push, as opposed to kind of having this light bump off the actual shroud. It's not something you'd have to do. I still think it looks fantastic. It looks really, really nicely done. And then, of course, you've got that block, which I'm pretty sure this is the Founder's Edition card with the EK block that's on there. But very, very nice setup. Looks great. And some nice runs. You know, a couple of these runs a little bit challenging right here. You can see right there on this side. But overall, this is well done. It's well executed. And some great photos here. Yeah. Nice top level shot right here. Again, where you can see that beautiful block. You can see the CPU in there. That's a cool shot. I love that shot right there. And this shows you, of course, a lot of that work that goes into running everything into the distro, right? And this is where I was saying that sometimes with, you know, a different approach, right? We're running things at a different angle, right? Because when you're working with the distro, you kind of want to try to make those bends easiest as possible to not complicate things for you. But that's also kind of what can cause a certain level of kind of rigidity in terms of the look of things, right? But it still came out really nicely. I like the path here that he went down with the cable too, as opposed to going up and kind of having that be a little bit more filled out. It's a very cool setup, man. And this should also be a very high performance system, especially with the Dark Hero. I don't know if you're taking advantage of the dynamic OC switcher technology, but very, very cool build. What do you guys think? Are you a fan of Michael's system? I think it's really clean, well executed, of course, high performance based system. So let me go ahead and take a look here at his submission form. And let's go ahead and see what we've got. All right, so this is Michael's system here. This was actually his first build. Wow. Thumbs up, Michael. Big credit to you if this was your first build. That was a pretty big undertaking to be able to go with a custom hardline build for not only the CPU, but also for the GPU with, you know, a distro plate and then adding in essentially a dual rad. So you didn't even go with a single rad. To be honest, I don't think you really needed the dual rad, but I know just from the amount of space that you have in this chassis, you almost kind of need to do it unless you just wanted to have the fans. But you definitely, I give you a huge amount of credit to put in the time and effort, especially for this being a first time build. And your bends and your runs came out pretty clean, man. So a pretty good job. You know, about the only one that looks immediately like it could have taken a little bit more work right here would have been this bend right here. But these are always a little bit kind of tricky when you're kind of going at an angle and then kind of going up. So let's see here. Does the build have a theme? Let me see. Oh, if you're going to be doing anything, make it something to be proud of. And I 100% agree, man. You put in a huge amount of effort here, a lot of hardware that you've invested in, and overall, it's going to be a fantastic system. A lot of people are going to be really happy with seeing something like this. And I would think a lot of people would be really happy about having a system of this caliber, not only with the hardware, but even what you've done in terms of the overall layout and the setup. 3 words to describe your build: simple, clean, and effective. Does the build have a name? Chernobyl. You think it looks like a reactor? Core components, we've got the Crosshair Dark Hero 5950X. So he's running a super high-end CPU in there. So I wonder if you're doing any type of additional work outside of gaming, because you've got a huge number of threads there. 3090 FE card. He's got 64 gigabytes of CL16 memory, 22 terabyte M.2 SSDs, along with an 8 terabyte hard drive, an Elgato 4K in there. He's got, of course, the ROG 011 Dynamic XL. He's got the Unifans in there as well, and then EK Velocity CPU for, of course, the CPU block, along with the EK block for the GPU, along with the active backplate. And it looks like all the rest of the other hardware is pretty much also EK as well within that setup. Overall, very, very nice system, nice hardware. It's going to be cool, it's going to be fast, and it looks great. Budget, enough to get it done. What aspect is he most proud of? Being able to get everything done, especially in relation to the hardline runs. I would agree with that. Anything that you would change? Going to a water-cooled motherboard and using RAID 0 for the boot drive. I don't think you need to do RAID 0. Personally, for me, I wouldn't do it. That's your choice. As far as going to a water-cooled board, you really pretty much have a water-cooled board. So I assume you mean maybe doing like a mono block. So something that would cover the CPU and the VRM. You know, whether the merit to it, I don't see that there's merit to it. The VRM is already extremely high performing and very thermally efficient on the board. So you would just be adding complexity to your build, especially with some of the very tight runs going from the VRM portion to then the CPU. If you were doing something like a formula board, if you did a mono block, the benefit, of course, is that you only have to run one in and one outlet. So it is simpler, very similar to yours. It's just, it ends up cooling both the VRM and the CPU, right? So what I mean by that is, here's the monoblock. The monoblock would cover this section right here, and then it would also cover the CPU. Okay. How long did it take him to put it together? About 16 hours the first time, and then 10 hours the second time, and then 4 hours the third time. I like that. Honest and realistic. And that's actually how it works a lot of times, sometimes with water-cooled builds, is that there's kind of like, you know, first time when you're maybe test fitting everything, you're doing everything, bleeding it out, maybe you make an adjustment, you change something up. So yeah, that's actually in pretty good times, considering it was your first time as well. Does a lot of gaming on here. So we got Call of Duty, Halo Infinite, and also does some video editing. So definitely you benefit from that 5950X. And his favorite feature is the ASUS UEFI BIOS. Very intuitive and really likes the overall feature set. So Michael, man, thumbs up. Really nice build. Let's go ahead and round that out by just taking a look at Cat's level of these shots. Very cool system overall, man. And thanks for submitting it. All right, so let's go ahead and head over to our next build here. Next up, we've got a system here from, I think, Australian Custom PCs, I believe. Yeah, the Enyo. All right. And let me go ahead and bring up the submission form here. Okay, very cool. All right, so let's get our images up here. All right, so very cool, nice setup, clean. Got our speakers, a little bit of backfill, RGB lighting, keyboard and mouse, of course, your gaming chair, and of course, a monster system right here. This is no joke. And you know, the really interesting thing that you might not realize when you talk about building a really big system like this is that big systems, as much as they seem like, oh, it should be super easy to build in a big system, I actually almost don't like building in them sometimes, because the thought process that you have to fill the space well in terms of using all that space so it doesn't seem empty is actually quite challenging. So it can be really tricky to actually use all that space in a way that visually looks kind of well balanced and defined. It doesn't mean you have to use it, of course, because the system will still work even if you don't use it. But generally, you really kind of want to use that space if you're getting a bigger chassis. So I can already see here that there's been a lot that's been filled in here, both from a thermal perspective and also complementary from a visual perspective. So very interesting, very cool. So let's go ahead and dive a little bit deeper into the system. Oh, so cool. We have an actual rear shot right here. Looks like we've got some inline monitoring that's in there. That's pretty cool with some interesting bends. I like that. And then here, of course, we've got dual pump res combos. Wow, these are huge. And of course, here we can see we've got our radiator up there. We've got fans, another radiator down there with more fans. Looks like these are going to be storage right here. And then the really interesting kind of design. So this is going to be very different than kind of your traditional type build, because the big difference here is that you almost don't have a focus on any of the hardware. You've almost created a visual identity of the system itself. So this is kind of a different approach, I'd say, where my approach, a lot of times I try to highlight the components that I have in my system and I want to see them even though I'm going for maybe a certain theme. Here, I almost feel it's like you have a theme in mind and you want that to be the visual item that's being reinforced. And so here, this almost kind of just gives you a cool kind of water themed kind of machine type of feel to it, right? Where you don't necessarily maybe know that you're looking at a system, right? Of course, if you're a hardware enthusiast, you get that, but it's got a different and kind of interesting approach. I like the color play here, right? So you've got the blue and the purples. I wonder what it would have looked like with a more opaque fluid as opposed to going with that. Now, that's always controversial because some enthusiasts, especially users that have done it a lot, you may not want to go with that because you have to worry about the opaque long term, do I have to change it out more, right? Is it going to actually stain anything, right? Do I kind of have to be concerned with? So this is definitely from a practicality standpoint, performance and practicality, it's better to probably have gone this type of option. But I think aesthetically, it might have been maybe even bolder or punchier with a more opaque fluid. But still, I love the color play. Very, very nice. The blue and the purples look fantastic. So let's keep looking here. And then we got that side profile shot right here. Very nice. And we can see right here, Michael, remember he was talking about having a water-cooled motherboard. This is actually a water-cooled setup. So we can see right here, we've got a Maximus Formula motherboard, which is has a water-cooled VRM. So we can see right here, it's gone right there, cooled the VRM. That runs out here. And of course, that's running into the rest. And then we've got another one right here that's running out into the rest. You've even got the memory that's water-cooled, the CPU water-cooled. So this is a seriously water-cooled system. GPU, VRM, CPU, and memory all water cooled. And then you've got a massive amount of displacement in here, probably more displacement than you need. But the one benefit that you're going to probably have in this is with the separated loops is that you're going to be able to have really, really good thermal dissipation performance relative to the component stack. And you could also keep those fans very, very low RPM. So while this actually might seem like it would probably be a loud system, I don't think this is probably on a fan curve. I'd love to know if he has this on a fan curve. My thought is that you would probably actually run this at a fixed RPM, low RPM, because you wouldn't need it. You could essentially just keep all those fans running at something like 800 RPM, have the system almost be inaudible, and have very, very good thermal dissipation performance. This might be my favorite shot right here. You can, of course, see the GPUs on block there with the NVLink bridge. Oh, serious right here. So we got a die design here. So this is for you guys. This is a hardcore overclocking system. So they took it to the next level and wanted to be able to even offer a higher level of overclocked performance. So here you can see that they've actually directly exposed it direct eye contact to really be able to offer essentially maximum overclocking. So I would expect in this system, we're really looking to really be able to push the envelope in terms of frequencies because we're trying to cool that CPU down as much as possible and really be able to offer a great OC experience. That's very, very cool. I think that might be the first time in the first system we've seen that has that exposed. And then, of course, threw up some monster numbers here as far as just some overclocking results. Yeah, I can see right here in terms of processor, especially for the 9900K, if he's running that at that 5.2 gigahertz, probably across all 16 threads, that's a monster of a system. So that's very, very impressive. Very cool. What do you guys think? What's your guys' thoughts on this system right here? Hey, Hayo. Thanks for joining us on the stream. If you've got questions related to kind of PC DIY, feel free to go ahead and join our PC DIY group, and hopefully we can be able to help you out with whatever your issue it is that you're wondering about, okay? So let's go ahead and see about Australian PCs Enyo system here. So this is from Australian Custom PCs. Not, of course, their first build. I wouldn't expect that to be. The theme, it's blue and purple. 3 words to describe it: enthusiast custom dual loop. Enyo is the name of the system right there. So yeah, we have a delidded Core i9-9900K on an ASUS Maximus Formula motherboard, Z690 from the chipset side, 2 Strix 2080 Ti's, a Thor 1000-watt power supply in there, and then, of course, all the cooling hardware that you see in the system, which it is a seriously high-end water-cooled system in terms of all the core components. Temperatures are quite impressive. We can see right here, let me see right here, he got max load is 30 to 40 C, and then the loop temp max is 26. On the GPU side, the max is 36 to 42. So that is outstanding thermal dissipation performance. Let's see, he's got reservoirs from Singularity Computers, D5 pumps, and then 4 res mounts on there. 2 fan controllers right there to be able to drastically reduce the noise. So yeah, so I was actually kind of right in terms of what I said, is that the preset is set to a 25% fan rate of 50 degrees. So that's where I was telling you that some people that go like in a fan curve, there's no reason when you have this much thermal dissipation, you don't actually want to track the CPU temperature at all, right? The goal would either be to keep in line with the float, with the coolant temperature, or just keep it on a fixed RPM while you're monitoring, right? Either which way, yeah, he delidded it. It's got it overclocked to 5.2 gigahertz, right? So overall, very monster system in terms of its overall performance specification and cooling performance. Budget overall was almost 11,000, so 1080, yeah, so about a little over, almost 11,000. The custom center panel for the tubing runs is what he's most printed out, and that's actually this back section right here. This is what he's talking about, that custom panel. So there's a lot of work there. He says that if he could change anything, he would probably do his own custom cables, just so he could be able to kind of better have probably the lengths be managed, and that's probably just more of a cable management thing. About 3 weeks to be able to put the system all together. It's mainly used for gaming, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, Cyberpunk, and Battlefield. And he really absolutely loves the formula boards. Their integrated water block and their feature set cannot be matched. So overall, fantastic build, man. Very, very cool. Thanks for sharing it. And just kudos on terms of the time and effort that you put into this build. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into our next build here. We've got a cool one. Yeah, this is I think this is David's build here. This is for, I think it's for the love of ROG, I believe it's the name of this system. Yep. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look here at this build. All right, so here we go. We can see we've got a cool system. I liked already the tricolor vibes. We've got red, white, and black, which is always kind of cool in terms of the overall color scheme. Brings me back to memories of the original RG boards, where that was a color scheme that we had for quite a number of years, with red and black being the predominant, but we had little white accents. So you can see the Thor power supply in there, the RG Strix graphics cards in there, RG Strix board, and some nice cooling. Looks like he used the stickers that we include with the motherboard to be able to go ahead and add some little additional flair right there to that rear mounted fan, the RGI sticker. So that is nicely done right there. Oh, he's got his whole setup right there. He's got a lot of little course figures, got some games, all kinds of all stuff right there. That's kind of cool. He's got his RG Rapture. He gets props right there. We got a fellow Star Trek fan in there, man. Very cool. Thank you so much. And then we've got the whole setup right here. Very, very cool. So he's got dual monitors. He's got his peripheral set up there. He's got his Armory Crate software right there running in the background with all the stat monitoring. And it looks like he's even got the ROG Spotlight. And then he's even using one of our cool ROG wallpapers here in the background from the ROG wallpaper posts that we have. Very, very cool. And then right here, we've got, of course, this little dual mesh kind of front intake. It's got a little bit of the sticker play in there. That's cool. It's definitely different. And this is what I mean, like by, of course, we saw a couple of O11s, and the O11s are really, really popular, but I tend to like chassis that have a little bit of a bolder kind of purposeful design. While not everybody, of course, has the same opinion in terms of what they like, it's cool to be able to just see different types of approaches in terms of kind of PC builds and what people pick. So here we have with no RGB lighting. Looks clean, well executed, all the cables managed. About the only thing that, I'd love to see right here is what happened right here, right? Is that, if we could maybe have something that could insert right there just to be able to keep that area exposed, not exposed, I think would help you out a little bit right there. But about beyond that, I don't think you really need that. It's cool that he's repping the G-Skill. I would have probably maybe kept that on the front just to keep the inside just a little bit cleaner. But I mean, definitely nothing wrong with, of course, giving love to any of the other companies that are in there. And that's a nice shot. That's really clean, well executed. All the cables are nicely run. You can even see down here, even though it is exposed, it's still well managed and very clean. So overall, I don't see any issues at overall with the way that he's got that build implemented. It's clean, well executed, functional, and it's going to perform well. So you can't really ask for more than that. So very, very solid. Let's go ahead and take a look here at his submission form. Let me go ahead and take a look here. Give me 1 second to get his submission form up, and we'll go back here to one shot from his system. So give me a second. Yeah, let's leave it at that one. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so sorry guys, hold on 1 second. I keep moving around that secondary monitor, but I need that submission form. Okay, all right, got it up here. Okay, so wait, do I have it here? Oh, there we go. Okay. Sorry, guys. Hold on 1 second. Okay, there we go. And let me get his form up here. Okay, there we go. Okay, we're all set there. All right, let's go ahead and maybe get a little bit tighter in there. A different shot. I think, yeah, I like that shot. Okay. All right, so let's see here. In terms of setup here. So this is from David. It's actually David's first build, man. So congrats, kudos on this being your first build. It's actually very well done in terms of the overall kind of cable management, how you routed everything for being a first build. No theme. He's just an ROG lover, and it took him actually over a year to get together all the hardware. And he's still hoping to actually be able to get an ROG case and an AIO. So maybe he's looking to actually be able to upgrade to like a Helios, maybe something like a Ryu or like a Ryujin cooler or something like that, or a Strix LC. I think the Strix LC would look really good in here. A Helios, of course, would look fantastic, but you don't need to. I mean, this system is going to cover you really well. You're still getting a good layout, so you don't really have to be able to jump into that. But if you do, man, thank you so much. But I think you've got it really well laid out already, and I think you've got a solid setup as it is. So 3 words to describe his system. Game Master Slayer. Does the build have a name? For the love of ROG. In terms of the core hardware that he's running, he's got a Z390 Strix board in there, the Dash F. He's got an RTX 3070 Ti, 9900K that he's got overclocked to 5 gigahertz. He's got, let's see, 32 gigabytes of memory. And then he's got, of course, that H100i AIO 1200 watt power supply. And then that's all running inside of that C300 Commander chassis from Thermaltake. So blown it was budget was blown out many times. Overall, it's probably cost him about $5,000, a bit more since he's in Australia. So I definitely know that Australians, they pay a little bit more in terms of kind of the markup that exists in some of the products, because it tends to be as product get brought in there, they don't meet the same kind of price points that we might have in the US. So even bigger credit to a lot of our fans actually from Australia that are super passionate, because I know that the products don't necessarily have the same MSRP levels that we have here in terms of the US. So what most aspect is he most proud of? All of it. Just overall happy with the build, the look and feel, and I think it's well done. Just clean, simple, well executed, nice color scheme. It's not overtly complicated. It's built to be able to have an enjoyable, clean looking system, and I think he did that. He would like to go with the Helios and Ryogen 2. Let's see, how long did it take him? About the first time was about 3 hours to get everything up and running, and then about 9 hours to be able to get everything finalized in terms of the lighting theme and the cables, and finding actually ultimately that there was a cable with a broken connector that he had to go ahead and get resolved. He predominantly games on the system, so Destiny 2, Rainbow Six Extraction, Forza. That's very cool. Love Forza. And his favorite feature, actually an item, is going to be the ROG Spotlight, which is, if we go back here, let me see if I can go back and show you guys. The Spotlight is that little accessory right here. It's this little guy, and it shines this little RGB eye. You can't get it anymore. We used to sell it, but it's no longer available, but it's a cool little accessory. So very, very cool, man. Thanks so much for sharing your build with us, man. Where do you submit? All you have to do is join the ASUS PCDIY group, and you can go ahead and drop your drop your build into the submission form. Let me go ahead and drop a link into our group. So if you're interested in checking it out, you can go ahead and do that. So give me 1 second right here. Yeah, I definitely agree. It's for a first build, man. It's clean and it's well executed. A lot of times I've seen a lot of builds where people have a lot of things miswired, right? They don't have kind of things balanced out correctly. So definitely, I gave a lot of credit there in terms of very solid, clean overall first build. Oh, Massar also has the RG Spotlight. Very, very cool, man. Thanks so much right there. So let's go ahead and get over to our next build here. So this is going to be KRG. And this is from another builder that we also have had actually featured here a couple of times. I believe Azrul. I'm Hakim, I believe, is the actual builder right here. He's done some really cool builds in the past. So let's go ahead and take a look here at his build. So he's got a really cool setup right here. We've got an ROG phone. We've got, looks like ROG keyboard and mouse right there. We've got a monitor. He's got the cool little ROG right here. He's got, he's got the ROG Aeron right there on his transformer, ROG Cup, ROG Delta headset, and then the Z11. So I love the Z11. Very cool, distinctive, interesting chassis. I wish I would see more of the Z11s in the horizontal orientation, which is one of the cool things because the chassis supported both. But a lot of people like the vertical orientation. Here you can see the cool thing about the Z11 with the integrated USB fan and ARGB controller that's built in there, which is really nice. Beautiful cable management there. So kudos for including that shot. You can see also a little bit of the lift angle, which gives some more flexibility for the cable routing path when we design that chassis. All right. And down there is, of course, where the PSU would be installed. Everything gets routed through and you're good to go. And again, this chassis can be oriented in either the vertical or horizontal orientation. You can do it in either or. But here you can see he's got it in the horizontal orientation, in the vertical orientation. You can see he's got the Ryogen 2 right there. He's also got the Strix graphics card, and you would be able to see that from the front. I don't know if we'll have an image that shows that off. Then you can see right there, there's the PSU shroud. He's got Noctua fans in there. So he kept the original fans that came with the Ryogen cooler. And then there's the setup on full display. So this is definitely an ROG setup, first and foremost. So very cool with the Z11 right there, with the Ryogen 2, with a graphics card on display. I don't know if he's got it showed off there that I can see it. There you can see no RGB lighting. Yeah, so I don't know if we have another, there's not another image where I can show you guys the front, but that is definitely a really cool setup. And I can tell you from right here, this looks like it's the Claymore 2. So this is our wireless and wired keyboard, because I can tell right there, those are the RX switches. Very, very cool. So let me go ahead and bring up his submission form. Let me see if we got any comments right there. Hey, Tomas. Right now, we don't have any additional products I can talk about in terms of what we might be designing or developing when it comes to monitors. We do have two monitors that we have gone ahead and announced. Keep in mind that for smaller based OLED displays, it's just not realistic because there are generally not a lot of production options in there, and it's quite challenging to be able to kind of produce an entirely new type of panel specific to a segment. Especially when I think that the majority of the segment isn't necessarily looking for that. I know OLED is very popular, but you still have a lot of challenges in terms of production and cost and other aspects. So I think right now we're really excited about first initially launching the ROG Swift OLED monitors that we have in the 42-inch and the 48-inch category. And then from there, we also are expanding some smaller OLED offerings that we'll have in our portable displays. As far as what we might be offering in that kind of more conventional size, whether you're talking about like 27 or larger, as always, just make sure to keep it tuned here to the ASUS PCDIY stream show and our PCDIY group, and you'll find out about products as soon as we announce them. All right. Yes, there is a Google Doc link for the submission, so we'll make sure to go ahead and drop that in a little bit. So let me go ahead and see what we got right here. So this was actually his very first build in his system. Does the build have a theme? Yes, it's ROG themed. 3 words to describe the build. He only put one: clean, and it is definitely very clean and well executed. Alone, if you guys remember the cable management shot, fantastic, really, considering that this is a small form factor build. Does the build have a name? KRG. Core hardware that we've got in here: Ryzen 2 240, Ryzen 5800X, an ROG STRIX 3070 Ti. Then he's got a 750 watt ROG STRIX power supply. That's all running on an ROG Strix B550-i motherboard, and then 32 gigabytes of RAM that he has in there. About $3,500 was the overall price point for his build. He's most proud of being able to achieve this in terms of an ITX build and have it come out really clean and well executed, and I would 100% agree with that. Anything that he would change: processor and GPU. I mean, that's a pretty high processor and graphics card, so I'm not sure how much more you really would want to be able to step up to and how much value would have. But it all depends, I guess, on what the use case scenario is. It took him about 2 days to be able to put everything together. He actually uses the system quite a bit for rendering. So actually, I guess it makes sense there that depending on the application that he's using, he could benefit from actually going to a higher end CPU. It could be a noticeable improvement too if he's going over to a CPU that has even more threads and even better performance specific to the rendering path. His favorite feature is ASUS Aura Sync through Armoury Crate, and that really works well, of course, because he's got an entire ecosystem of ROG hardware that is all going to be compatible with Armoury Crate and Aura Sync. So overall, very, very cool setup, man. So thanks so much for submitting your system, man. All right, so let's go ahead and go over to our next build here. So next up, we've got Bradley's system here. And I believe Bradley, we don't have as many images from Bradley, so his will be a little bit quicker in terms of his build. And no name for his system. So let's go ahead and take a look at his system here. Very, very cool. So it's we got a predominant white themed base build. I love the actual little bit of a different accent right here with the purple. And then of course we also got a little bit of lighting here with the RGB memory, which I think is actually a cool touch, just to be able to kind of create a little bit of a kind of distinctive visual aesthetic that we have right there. We've got a vertical oriented GPU. Now this is where I'm always kind of torn, right? Because I think that it looks cool because of course you have the white that ties in this and this, but I feel like having that, again, that little bit of the separation layer, like what we saw with Blue Frost, would have given you a little bit maybe more fill. But this is also a little bit of a challenge with this chassis because you have this exposed area down here. And how would that played out when you would have had the GPU base horizontal? I still think you might have had a little bit more kind of fill light and contrast, but this is still really nicely done. I love the approach right here with just simple, clean runs right here, nothing overtly complicated. And there you can see. So nicely done. The purple's clean. I like these secondary colors. We've got the big rad right here. We've got our supplemental fans. And then you can see right here, of course, you've got your other fans, more fans there at the top. We've got the, of course, interesting setup right here with Corsair's integrated, course, water cooling pump res right there. And then you've got your runs that are running back here. That's overall nicely done. I mean, there's nothing really here that I would go by. You could, if you really wanted to, you could say, hey, maybe put a little bit of sheath on right there to cover that. Maybe match it, or at least go with black. But overall, very nicely done. I mean, really tight. I mean, even down here, he's got everything really cleanly routed and well done. So it's a nice, clean, well executed system with a nice color theme to it as well. So let's go ahead and take a look here at his submission form. Give me 1 second to go ahead and bring up his submission form. All right, so I've got his submission form right here. So this is Bradley's build, not his first system. Does your build have a theme? The theme is pretty, and I think it looks good. Yeah, it definitely looks nice. 3 words to describe the build: clean, soft tubing, and I would agree. And this, I think, goes to show you can have a really nice job when you do soft tubing. And it also has some nice fluidity, right? Because it has these nice curves that this would be really hard to do with a hard line, right? And it also shows you the practicality of where soft tubing can work really well. Because if you don't want to have a kind of complicated distro and everything like that, this type of setup still works really smoothly to just be able to run these lines, have them look clean and well done, and not add a lot of complexity to the system, right? And it's easier, cheaper, and ultimately easier in terms of the total run implementation too, right? Does the build have a name? No. Core hardware, this is a Z690 based system, so 12900K overclocked on a Z690 STRIX D4 board. We've got 4,000 megahertz memory. We've got a 3080 Ti, which is running underwater. That's all inside of a Thermaltake View 51 Snow Edition. 1200 watt power supply in there. He's got the 360 mid rad that's in there. Let's see, 2 terabyte SN850. So he's got PCI Gen 4 M.2 ACE SSDs, and then another set of Samsung 2 terabyte SSDs, and then a WD 8 terabyte. So he's got lots of storage. No budget was really defined there. So that's pretty expensive if you add everything up for this hardware wise. Most proud about just ultimately how clean it all came out in terms of taking advantage of soft tubes and having them look good. Nothing that he would change about the system. How long did it take him to put together the system? They're never finished. You're always upgrading and changing things. To a degree, I would definitely agree with that. What does he use with the system? Gaming, browsing, business stuff, Cyberpunk, Forza, Zero Dawn, Cold War Zombies. And definitely his favorite thing about the overall board and ASUS in general is going to be our UEFI BIOS. So overall, man, Bradley, thumbs up. Clean, well executed, nicely done. All right. Let's go ahead and go to our next system. Yeah, it's a little bit of a non-traditional approach in terms of doing that. The only disadvantage you might have is that depending on how much depth you have, right, it covers that kind of part of the I/O shroud on the motherboard. So this section right there. But some people kind of really like that. I think it's definitely an underutilized section, right? And where you've seen it traditionally used most is for people that end up doing layouts that tend to use like 120 millimeter AIO, right? But those have kind of really gone out of favor with more people moving over to 240 and 360 millimeter IOs, which you can't mount there. So either people leave it open, which you see a lot in like an 011 type of build, or you get people that might sometimes put a fan there. But putting the pump reservoir there isn't definitely necessarily something common. Playa 9000 asks, would it be better to do a build on the Formula or the Apex? They're two different boards, but they're both fantastic. I mean, the reality is that from a performance standpoint, they're essentially going to be parity. The Apex is going to potentially have maybe just a little bit better 2-DIMM overclocking, even if you're running 2 DIMMs on the same exact board, just because it's been in a little bit of an enhanced topology and layout. I think for probably most people, the Formula is the better option just because aesthetically it's got a really cool, distinctive design aesthetic, but they're also very different. The Formula is white and then the Apex board is black. But from the core feature set and experience, they're both outstanding. But I think the Formula with even better audio that it has, more connectivity that's present on the board, and then kind of a feature set that's a little bit more complementary to most general builders, it's probably the better option. But if you ask in the group and you give a little bit more context regarding what your goals are, maybe I can give you some more insight as far as which might be a better build, better board to pick. But the reality is, if we just talk about from a performance experience, they're pretty much going to be both parity if you use the same exact hardware. So it really comes down to the specifications, the features, and the aesthetics, as well as the connectivity that you're looking for. Is there an RG board? Yes, we do have NVLink solutions. I don't know if there's any actively available, and depending on your region, it might have not been something that they brought in within your they might have not brought in for your region. That's always a little bit of a tricky thing, as far as that not every single region will carry every single product that ASUS releases. So that's always something that you kind of sometimes have to kind of check in with ASUS within your region to find out if that component that essentially you're looking for is available. Okay, so let's go over to our next build right here. This is going to be from Gregory, also another build that does not have a name here. All right, so this is also, I believe, going to be a hardline build. Is it hardline or soft tube? I don't remember. Oh, okay. Actually, hold on. He looks like we have. Oh, one of the images. I don't know if I'll be able to actually be able to view, because he's got. I didn't re-image these all into JPEGs, and we've got a different format applicable, but we will make it work. I think the other images we can go ahead and show off without any problems. So give me 1 second here. If I have our viewer here, I might be able to do it. Okay, yeah, I don't have our viewer installed. So go with that. Okay, let's go ahead and go with what we've got right here. So here we can see we've got a cool little setup right here. So you can see you've got RGB lighting, we've got the rad, some nice Be Quiet fans in there. We've got our block. We can see that right there. We've also got the little exposed live dash display on a formula board right there. We've got a distro block right here. And then we've got our runs coming over from the horizontally mounted GPU. I like the color tones right here with the red. And then we've got, of course, our chrome fittings right here, and the black, right? And then a little bit of that white. So that tricolor vibe, I think, always works well, because the bright gives you a nice amount of illumination. And then you've got the contrast with the black, and then the kind of the red to be able to kind of bring home the overall look and feel to the overall system. So I'm liking that. So this looks like he's got it modified within a main gear chassis. So that's pretty cool. We'll take a look at the description notes there in a little bit. But this is also an interesting implementation where we've got the distro right here, right? Where that also in itself is a little bit different, like where I talked about, where we don't have a traditional kind of design approach. This is actually a little bit different in terms of creating a visual look and feel that is not necessarily maybe always focusing on a core component, but maybe trying to have a kind of visual that is more so about kind of the entirety of all of it put together, right? Because we've got this block right here, which kind of takes center focus, and then from there, it kind of extends into this kind of layered narrative of how the actual hard lines are implemented across all the hardware within the system. So that's cool. And this is a better shot in terms of what we have right here. So this is cool. A very interesting setup. I like, of course, the black and red cables right there. Very clean in terms of the cable routing, in terms of how it's pretty much all been managed right there. The one disadvantage is we miss a little bit of that nice cable here, because you've got so much that is blocked out right here initially by that distro, right? The cool thing is right here, I think this is actually the drain port, but that's like a disadvantage, right? Because it's a little bit tricky, because you don't have the cable running at how you then can easily kind of drain it out. But overall, I give a lot of credit here too, because he left the exposed section right here for the OLED live dash display. So some people might sometimes run something over that and kind of block it out, which I think would kind of defeat the point of having this cool readout. So I think that's actually a pretty cool option. We do block out this section here, which does have a little bit of lighting, but that's still pretty well done. About the only area that I would have maybe changed up is maybe gone with the diffuse stripped right here, as opposed to this bright strip. But that's going to look different, because, of course, when he has the panel on there, you don't see that, right? You see this, and you see a little bit of the spot filled, and that's where I still might have preferred a diffuse strip, but it still looks quite nice, and it gives you that illumination that comes off across on the hardware. Nice, clean cable routing done here in the back. Kudos to him for including it, so thank you so much. And then just a shot there with the panel on. And there you can notice, of course, you don't see anything, right? You don't see any of those RGBs. You just see the little bit of that lighting. The only negative thing is that it's a little bit bright, so maybe you're washing out a little bit of that cool kind of red lighting right there. So maybe if we could adjust that, maybe bring it down a little bit, diffuse it down, so that here you get a little bit more of the red, and you get a little bit more of that chrome. I think that would look cool. Sometimes I don't think you need to have light everything up. So for me, I might even test it out by moving that strip altogether and see what it looks like, where you have those colors kind of pop up a little bit more. Another interesting thing might actually put a light up here, whether it's red, and then have like a little bit of a downfill. I also sometimes like playing around with adding in a little bit of a light in this type of section inside the internal cavity underneath the shroud to push up a little bit of light inside of the system. You don't see it. It's almost just like this little bit of light that kind of comes out from the bottom. And I think that would look really cool if you moved this actual brighter light and then you turned it a little bit more into ambient lighting, right? That's my only feedback. Overall, you know, the runs are nice, clean, well executed. Everything else is nicely routed out, and it definitely looks like a nice high performance system. So kudos, man. Let's go ahead and take a look right here and see what we've got in terms of your submission form. So does the build have a theme? Prioritize the look of a custom loop. I would actually, that's exactly what I said, right? Where we're not talking about prioritizing core components, although he did a good job to still be able to highlight this kind of live dash display. It was more about the custom loop itself, right? 3 words to describe the system: cool, quiet, and simple. I would definitely agree with that. No name. Core components, he's got a Maximus 12 formula that's running 10850K in there. I'm definitely assuming overclocked on there based on only the board, but also with the CPU. He's got a 3090 card in there that's also, of course, water cooled. TUF RAM, 3600 megahertz CL17. The Main Gear Vibe chassis. It's also got the Main Gear Apex distro, which is specifically designed for that. Then an 850 watt power supply, Bits Power premium fittings, and EK Velocity water block. Biski GPU block, Primo Chill, Rad, XS Rad, and then Alpha Cool Rad, yeah, and also an Alpha Cool Rad that's in there, and then the Be Quiet 120 millimeter fans that are set up in there. About $5,000 total budget. He's most proud of just overall the kind of the clean and simple execution, and I would definitely agree with that. Nothing he would change about the build. About 3 weeks worth of work, and he does gaming on it. Cyberpunk, Red Dead Redemption, Age of Empires. Age of Empires, man, thumbs up, man. Age of Empires for me is definitely one of my absolute favorite titles because I'm a huge RTS guy. But definitely with the updated Cyberpunk aspects, those are really, really cool too. So also looking forward to the next big patch, right? His favorite feature, the OLED screen on the formula board. So overall, man, Gregory, nice, cool build. What does everybody think? Everybody else think up there? Oh, interesting. So yeah, he's thinking maybe add some of that. That's kind of interesting. So oh yeah, Playa, you were noting that the Apex does not support the video out. So yes, you're correct. That's where I was talking about that connectivity, right, in the feature set. So that is a benefit, right, is having that flexibility. If you want to be able to have the GPU support for the iGPU, then of course that's where the formula is going to benefit you. All right, so let's go ahead and go to our next build here. I think we've got a couple left right here. Got Ryan's system. See right here. This is going to be, yep. This is going to be Ryan's build, which is going to be a no-name build also. So we got a few different no-name builders here. That's okay. You don't always have to name your system, but it's always fun when people do. So, oh, I like this. All right, cool. All right, so here we've got Ryan's system, no name, but very nice and clean, well executed. A little bit more compact right here. We got beautiful, of course, ROG STRIX card in the best orientation, horizontally. And then we've got an ROG Ryogen right there, 240 with RGB-based fans, and then an ROG STRIX board that's set up in there. Very nice, clean, tidy, compact. I'm loving the color scheme in here. I wonder which fans these are. These are very interesting that have this kind of like little 4-point color scheme. It works really, really well in here because you get the color schemes showing on each one of those and it kind of reinforces that. So you actually have a subtle color reinforcement throughout the theme that comes through really, really nicely. I really like that. And keep in mind, this looks really well, even with the lighting that he has actively already on. So this is not in the dark. So it actually looks pretty cool. I like this actually setup. And there we have with the RGB lighting off, and it looks fantastic even with the RGB lighting off. You've got this really cool, just blacked out build. So it's actually pretty cool that you could just kind of switch it over into blackout mode. Oh, cool. Those are the AL120s. Yeah, I was like, it slipped my mind. But yes, those. I love the look on those fans. Very, very nice and really nicely done in terms of the overall layout. So let's go ahead and pop that back here to, sorry. There we go. And then we've got his whole setup. Wow. Whole setup is pretty wild right here. So he's got his compact system. He's got the Clips Pro Media 2.1s in there. Still some great speakers. He's got his dual ASUS monitors right there, man. Thanks so much. And he's got an RG Strix Scope TKL. I love the light bar that we have on the TKL right there. He's got his mouse. Looks like a nice custom cable right there. And then he's got a huge, of course, looks like probably like a, I think it's probably a TV that's up there that he has also as another monitor. So he's got a whole system set up, and the kind of the color scheme that he has in there, you can see is kind of tied in all together with the purple and the black. So very, very cool setup. I wonder though, I'd love to hear your feedback on how the neck handles, right, looking up there, right, with such a big monitor there, or maybe do you kind of lay back and kind of look at it like that? These two monitors, I think, work fantastic, but that one's a little bit of an interesting. And then, you know, got to have a little bit of green in there, right, to add in the plant. But very, very nicely done. Clean, well executed. A very, very nice build. This for me is kind of the type of build I'd love to do. Just clean, simple, well done with a really nice a focused color scheme. Because I give credit here too, where we're not talking about generally a default rainbow. This is a little bit more articulated. So very nicely done right there. So let's go ahead and take a look here at his submission form. So does the build have a theme? ROG. Thank you so much. Yeah, we can definitely see in terms of key ROG hardware, it's got ROG motherboard, ROG cooler, and an ROG graphics card. 3 words to describe the build is sleek and small. It definitely is a nice, compact, high-performance system. It doesn't have a name. Core hardware here is running an X570-F, a 3070, a Ryzen 7 5800X, 32 gigabytes of memory, 3600 megahertz, 9 AL120 fans. Those are of course, Landly fans. We've got, of course, a 750 watt PSU, and then the Ryujin 240. That's the original Ryujin, but fantastic setup. That is really like a great balance in terms of having a system that's not necessarily over-spec'd in any which one way, but really designed for a great high-performance experience. Whether you're talking about general usage, whether it's talking about gaming or general content creation, you've really got a really good balance in terms of the core hardware that you have here. And it shows you can have a really good mix in terms of not necessarily going to the extremes on any side, but having something that looks fantastic and I think is really well balanced. There was no defined budget, but I think overall he got a really good set of hardware there to be able to kind of have the system come out the way that it did. He's most proud of the all ROG and all black matching. He potentially might want to be able to upgrade to a Ryujin 2, which is just the newer version of the cooler. That's the same one that I've got right here on the Apex board. Took him about a year to be able to get all the hardware together, which definitely meant kudos to the patience, the time and effort, because I know that sometimes in the market conditions, especially probably for the GPU, that was a little challenging. He uses this as a workstation, streaming, and some mild gaming. And his favorite aspect overall is going to be the software suite, AI Suite 3. So that's, of course, transitioning over to Armory Crate, but our AI Suite 3 for me for a long time was our kind of cornerstone for monitoring, overclocking, fan management. Was a very solid utility. Hopefully, you're taking advantage of now the transition over into Armory Crate, now taking over for that. But overall, man, Ryan, kudos, man. It's definitely one of my favorite builds that I've seen in a while in terms of just the overall color scheme, the layout. I love these black cables, how you got those routed there, and also that you did the swoop over as opposed to under, so you got that full RGB light bar fully exposed. Oh, okay, that's cool. So Ryan's actually noting right there that the TV there is for the top, right? So yeah, that's for checking out the TV. So we'll just kind of give you a little bit there. So he's got 2 systems set up. So yeah, that's cool. That makes sense in terms of kind of setting it up there. And then the other PC runs the 2 monitors at the bottom. So the different setup he has for different kind of purposes. Very cool, man. So fantastic build, man. Thank you so much for submitting it. All right, so let's go here to our next. We got the bird. Let's see what we got here. I think this system, they did actually give us even a little bit of a video file, so we might have a video file to be able to show you guys for this system. All right, so let's take a look right here. This is the bird from Dan. All right, so Dan's got his TUF Gaming mouse and keyboard in there. He's got his monitor there. It looks like an RG system. So interesting right here. Looks like he's doing a little bit of kind of the test setup to get everything up and running. He's got an interesting setup already with the Helios here because he's got Fans. I'm always a little bit divisive about wanting to use fans in the Helios because I love seeing the Mayan pattern finish on the actual tempered glass by itself, not having the RGB backfill. But I know some people really like the look of it, and it can still look cool. But I do like the approach that he went here, that he's got the green, and then we've got an accent color in the back to be able to give it contrast, which is kind of an interesting way to do it. We can see we've got a Thor right here. We've got an ROG Strix board, and it looks also like an ROG Strix LC cooler that's also in there as well. So let's finish taking a look here at the kind of core hardware. So there we go. Nicely done. So looks like it's all coming together right there. Yeah, so we got the fans, a little bit of a kind of black and purple. Actually, I really like that he went with this red, just not matching it all up and purposely wanting to go with something that's different, because that forces you to have an immediate point of contrast and almost kind of call it out, right? So that's really cool in terms of that being played out. I really like the way that's done with having the red right there, then the rest with the purple vibe, I think is really nicely done. We got the board on there, and of course we have the Nighthawk memory. This is some of my favorite memory in terms of the look on this memory. And then we've got, of course, a streamer cable that's in there, and that's all, of course, inside of the Helios. And the interesting thing here is he didn't go with the black Helios. He went with the white Helios. And the cool thing about a white Helios is you get all this reflective surface. So the color is really going to kind of pop. So it almost gives you like a third kind of experience in terms of the components having their own color, where if you would have gone with the black Helios, all that lighting is absorbed. So you don't necessarily have it pop out in the same way to kind of fill the lighting in an ambient way. So that's a really kind of cool approach. And then we've got also the Thor down here, which is cool. And then I'm pretty sure he put an accent light down here. So he's got an LED in there. I don't know if that's needed, but it's kind of a cool effect. I would probably play around, maybe put it down here at the entire bottom and fill this space and see how that might look, because I feel like just having it right there as an angle seems a little bit off to me. But I don't know if maybe you've got something still planned that you're kind of working on right there, right? And there you can see right there where I was talking about that kind of dual kind of contrast, right? Where you've got the color in the front and then you've got the color in the back. Oh, very interesting. So a lot of cables right here, well managed. Good job. No problems. It's got a ARGB controller there, and then you've also got the controller up here. The only thing I would probably say is I sometimes like splitting up my cables just so I know where my cables are going, but this is, of course, easier to kind of just group them together. And he's got a lot of mechanical, actually looks like 2.5-inch hard drives, which is interesting in terms of his hard drive configuration. That's the cool thing. You pretty much don't see those at all once you have the actual rear cover on there. And then he's got a little bit of a different lighting setup, and it looks like he's got another controller in here, and then you got the cooler setup. I think I prefer that other color scheme from that. What do you guys think? Do you guys like this color scheme or the other color scheme? So here's our video. Let's go ahead and take a look at the video. Oh, all right. That's a pretty eclectic kind of strobed color setup that we've got right there. Pretty wild, right? But that's cool. That's definitely cool. So that color scheme, guys, or the purple? I like the purple. I'm going to go with the purple color scheme. And I think this looks pretty good. I like the way this turned out. Now, I don't know. Of course, maybe he's just using it primarily from the CPU. Let's take a look at a submission form and see what else we've got going on here. So let's see. This is actually his first build, man. So kudos again. Dan, man, credit to you in terms of having this be your first build. Overall, it's coming out pretty clean and well executed. Does the build have a theme? STRIX, so ROG. 3 words to describe the build: my dream computer. So definitely looks like this is a work in progress in terms of kind of getting together all the hardware, which is even more amazing. So thank you so much for your support. Does the build have a name? The Bird. Core components right here. So we got an ROG Strix X570-E, a 5950X. So he's definitely doing some heavy kind of CPU utilization here, because you've got a lot of cores, a lot of threads on here. He's got an ROG Strix LC360, 1200 watt power supply. He's got the T-Force Nighthawk memory, 32 gigabytes of it. And then he's got the Asia Horse Matrix Black 58 addressable RGB LEDs. He's got, let's see, yep, the Helios, the white edition. Then looks like Asia Horse 9001 RGB case fan pack. And then Sleeve cables as well in there. Cooler Master MF fans that he's got set up in there. And then he's also looks like he's got an ARGB fan splitter hub, right, which makes sense. And then he's got that temporary graphics card. So that's not the final graphics card. It's just a DT710 to be able to get up and running, which makes sense. He's probably waiting to be able to get the graphics card that he's hoping on just based on the current market conditions. And then looks like hard drive configuration is pretty mixed. He's got 5 total hard drives that are in there. And then he's also got a USB 3 2-port expansion card. Okay. Oh, and that makes sense. He's probably got that 2-port expansion card because the Helios, this is actually something that a lot of people don't realize. The Helios here at the top, right, it has 4 USB ports. And not every motherboard will actually have 4, essentially 2 internal USB 3 headers that are on the motherboard. So he wants to probably have all 4 of those connections be active. So he had to add in a card to be able to go ahead and give you that, which is actually, that makes sense. You see right here, this is the cable. So he's got that running in to a PCIe slot so he can have the best performance. And then he can have essentially those additional USB ports work. So that is a cool little addition right there. Okay, so let's see, about $2,400. What he's most proud of is all of it. Had to build it about 8 hours, no hardware issues, no complications, everything's running well. He's just ultimately looking to be able to get that new GPU in there when he can get when he can afford it, and he'd like to maybe be able to upgrade to a Ryzen 360. I think that the LC360 in there that you have looks great. I wouldn't change it out, but the Ryzen 2, of course, looks fantastic. Took him about 8 hours to put together. Uses it for a mix of personal and business, and he loves the overall BIOS and the setup and the feature experience, and he is also a big fan of USB BIOS flashback. Overall, man, Dan, very cool build. Thumbs up, especially on your first build. Credit due where credit due. It's clean, it's well executed, and I think it's going to look fantastic once you get that GPU that's in there, get you up and running, and hopefully best of luck with your build in the long term, man. So thank you so much for submitting it. All right. Okay, so we're almost getting ready to wrap things up here, guys. We've got, I think, 2 last builds here. And we've got definitely 2 awesome last builds here to be able to cover. So we're going to be ending them on very high points here with, I think, the last builds that we have. So let's take a look here. This is going to be the Hell build from David. All right, this is pretty cool. So I think this is an update to a previous Builder Spotlight submission where he added in this stat panel right here, which looks really cool. It just takes it kind of whole next level. I love the lighting here, and this is a point of where I said that sometimes you don't need to light everything, right? And some of the recommendations I made in the past where I talked about like moving the LED strip from this corner to a fill light, you can see that's actually what he's done right here, which gives you that just little bit of that red down there, which is kind of cool. And same thing where he's got it up here where you won't see this LED strip. It'll actually be hidden, but it'll give you this little drop down kind of ambient lighting effect, which looks really cool. And while I'm not always a fan of a vertical GPU design, I think this works really well because, again, it's played out into how he has the entire theme, the composition of how he's run his hardline, tied into the graphics card, and then pulled into the back is creating depth and contrast. It shows off the PCB, the block, those red points of bright, bold red, and then ties into the rest of the system. I really actually like this aesthetic, and it's an aesthetic that you probably wouldn't be able to achieve in the other way because it would change the overall look and feel. So here, the choice to go with the vertical design is purposeful, and I think it looks really cool. So overall, very, very cool. I really like this kind of setup. So let's keep taking a look here. So we've got, you can see right here, this is where the depth and contrast is really cool. So you've got the block, so you can see right there in the back and then in the front, and those 2 separated essentially zones create depth and contrast, which is really cool. It's got a really nice aesthetic to it. You've got the memory right there. I don't know if he purposely did it, but even the way that normally I'm not a fan of layering in a hardline over memory, he put it perfectly over the actual point in the memory where there's actually a little bit of a space right in the memory where it's transitioning from one height to another height. And that's part of the design of the memory, but it's kind of cool because it also makes it feel contiguous. So this is a really cool way to play it out. He did a very nice job here. And even though it eats a little bit of the ROG logo, this bend and this run is still really nicely done, really clean. And I love this look with the reservoir. Overall, this is really nice, really clean, well executed. Oh, that's an awesome setup right here. This red and black theme is just fantastic. We've got some nice LED panels right here in the back, more LED panels over here. You got your ultra wide right there with an ROG, of course, ultra wide. We've got the Chakra monitor, Chakra mouse. We got the, looks like this is the sheath. It looks like the Falchion. And then we also have the Gladius 3 right there. And then he's even got the throne there. So this is a very, very cool setup. And also the cool thing is you can pretty much sync all his key lighting right here with Armory Crate, which is really cool. So, and this is a little bit different. We just saw the Helios, but you notice here he did not put RGB fans, right? So he kept it black. And that's where I told you that the design really kind of pops. It's got a little bit of a cool look to it. So very, very, very cool setup here. And here we can see no RGB lighting. And that just shows you how polished, how clean everything looks. Really nicely done. It still looks fantastic with no RGB lighting, right? And it's also a great showcase to show you how much room you have in the Helios, where this is a very flexible chassis where you can go with vertical, you can go horizontal, you can do dual rads, you can have a lot of different options how you lay everything out. Very cool setup right there too, yep. I love that look. It's definitely one of my favorite Helios builds. What do you guys think? I'm a big fan of this one. Very cool overall build. So let's go ahead and take a look here and see his submission. Hey, Richard, take care, man. Fantastic. All right, so let's see here. This was actually his first build. So, man, kudos. This is a fantastic first build. Does your build have a theme? ROG Fanboy Extreme, 3 words to describe the system. The build have a name. It's going to be the Hell build. And core hardware, let's go ahead and see his core hardware. So this is going to be a Crosshair 8 Extreme. He's got 64 gigabytes of memory. That's 3600 CL14, 982 terabyte NVMe drives that are in there, 2 terabyte, yeah, 980 Pros. So he's got 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. Wow, so he's got 10 terabytes of 980 Pros in there. That's crazy. Awesome. An RG Strix 3090 in there that's water cooled, and that's all inside of a Helios 1200 watt power supply, the ROG Thor. And then he's got Noctua IPPC fans in there pretty much across the board. And then Noctua F12s in there as well. And then he's got the ROG Swift PG35 VQ. So that's our ultra wide 35 inch. That's the 3440 by 1440 monitor, 200 hertz, right? HDR 1000, fantastic, really awesome monitor. And then the Falchion keyboard. And then, of course, the other items I talked about, like the Gladius 3. And then he's got the, of course, the water cooling hardware that's in there. Overall, fantastic build, man. It's a great set of hardware. What is he most proud of? Overall, I think the liquid cooling, right, and the overall execution. And I think the fit and finish looks fantastic. Took him about 1 year to be able to get everything all together in terms of his hardware. He uses it for gaming. So God of War, Far Cry 6, Dota 2. His favorite feature and function, or his favorite kind of aspect of the system, is the ROG Strix 3090 card, with especially underwater is a fantastic card. Very cool, man. David, hats off to you. This is a fantastic build. It's beautifully done and really clean and well executed. And I love just this little addition here of the stat panel. It's a really nice touch to kind of be able to take the system to the next level. Overall, a great build, fantastic showcase, man, and definitely one of my favorite builds that I've seen in terms of just kind of the overall, I think, fit, finish, execution, and use of space within the Helios. Really, really nicely done. And that classic red and black aesthetic is beautifully done in there. All right, so I think we've got one last one in here, guys, or we might have two. Two builds left, and then we're wrapping things up, guys, here. So we've got a fantastic build from another fantastic modder here from Derek Wilson. And this is going to be, I believe, the Thermalbot. Yep. This is going to be the Thermalbot. This is from Rhodes PC here. So let's go ahead and take a look. Ooh, right off the bat, very cool. We can already see we got some heavy customization, got some de-stressing going on, some cool kind of accents right here. We can see that ROG Strix card vertical in there. Oh, there's more to tell. Oh, look at this. And this definitely's got the little bot vibes in there. That little 001 right there. Yep. That's very cool. Very, very cool visual. That's a great photo too. I love even having the hammer down there in the back. That's a nice little touch. I got your like little treads right here. You got the chassis, which you've gone ahead and customized and distressed. Your Rode PC logo right there. I love this little accent right here with kind of the little button and kind of the look of the bot. It's definitely very cool. I like the overall look and feel right here. This is a creative, fun mod. You can see a lot of time and work and effort went into the overall customization of the chassis to be able to kind of really tie the theme together. This is something that he's done really well, and in some prior mods that he's gone ahead and showed off and submitted as well. So kudos, man, to the time and effort that you've gone ahead and put in here. Love just the attention to detail in that stressing looks really cool. I even really like actually the RGB. Oddly enough, it plays off like almost like there's a little bit of kind of work and processing going off inside of this little system than having the standard kind of lighting. So this lighting feels more in line with the look and feel of the system, but I kind of like the little alternated color here where the rainbow almost feels like it's like processing, right? So I think that's kind of like a little bit of a cool vibe to it. The only thing that would have set it off is like if we could have had some little, maybe some like LEDs right here in the eyes, would have maybe been really, really, really cool. But I still think it looks fantastic. Giving us another little angle and shot right there. It's really clean, a lot of cables, really well managed, even though you can't see inside, quote unquote. At that level of kind of detail, just to be able to kind of give you a little bit of kind of some stuff going on there, but not just a bunch of cables, is kind of nice in terms of just really showing an attention to detail. It's really nicely done, man. Kudos in terms of the overall design and aesthetic, man. That's a very cool system and a very cool mod. So let's go ahead and take a look and see at the submission form here. So does the build have a theme? Yes, there was a theme. Was to turn it into some form of robot, very much inspired by Wall-E because of how the square the actual chassis is, right? So that 100% makes sense, right? So the Divider 200 case. So it definitely does have some of those vibes. What are 3 words to describe the system? Robotic, game, and cube. Does the build have a name? Yes, Thermal Bot is the name. In terms of, let's see, our core components that we have here. So he's got a Ryzen 7 in here, 5800X. That's running on an ROG Strix X570-I motherboard. He's got Thermaltake TUF RAM in there, 4400 megahertz in there. He's also got an ROG Strix 3080 graphics card that's in there. A 2 terabyte hard drive in there. He's also got a 1 terabyte Fire CUDA 530, and then also a Thermaltake GF1 850 watt power supply, and that's all inside of the VT200TG chassis from Thermaltake. And then he's also got supplemental TUF fans in there from Thermaltake in there to provide additional cooling. About $3,500 was the total price point for the build. He is most proud of my favorite part of this project was to be able to take the cube chassis, draw up an idea, and find ways to be able to bring it to life. There were many trips to different hardware stores and hobby stores for different kind of nuts and bolts and foams, glues, and all the different types of materials that kind of went together to be able to create kind of the distressed aesthetic and kind of the textured look and finish, which you can definitely see in here. There's a lot of these little subtle details of kind of adding these little elements that went into creating like kind of the treads, these little gears, the screws. And then I know the finishing process that I asked him about here was a lot of work, where you'd be surprised. Sometimes it's easier to just paint something than it is to distress it, because to make it look distressed can actually be challenging. It's a little bit of an art to figure out how to make things look kind of patinaed and aged, because you have to kind of go through a laying process, kind of do things. And in itself, it's actually a lot of work. So credit to where credit due. Is there anything you would change about the build? Yes. So the robot's head is actually mounted on a servo motor, and a small LED panel on the top is in fact a servo motor tester that has allowed me to bring motion to my project and enable the head to look back and forth, which was very fun. However, unfortunately, right near the final stages of the product, my little servo motor died, and I didn't want to restart from the beginning to fix the issues. If I had time, I would go back and essentially have done stronger solders to be able to fix those issues and not ensure that they would have happened, and ensure that everything kind of was working. So that would have been awesome. That would have been really, really cool to know that this actually could have kind of moved back and forth. That's really, really cool, man. Very, very cool. He spent about 2 months worth of time to be able to kind of get everything up and running and finalize it. Um, what is the system used for? The system has been used for a bit of kind of fusion and Prusa slicer. So that's pretty cool. Some web design and gaming. And he's really been enjoying New World as far as kind of a game on there. And also just being able to kind of just have a great gaming experience on it altogether. He's always happy when he gets to utilize actually kind of an ASUS synergistic system, because he can take advantage of Armored Crate, kind of one-stop shop to be able to monitor, manage, and control all the kind of features and functions of the boards. Loves that he's able to get high performance, of course, out of those core ROG components on there as well. Overall, man, kudos to the build, man. It's an overall very cool build. It's fun, it's distinctive, and it's got a very cool aesthetic. So let's go ahead and wrap it up with the last build that we've got here, and one of my absolute favorite builds that I've seen in a long time. When I saw it posted by Kevin, and overall the Titan rig, I said, please submit this right away, because it was one of my absolute favorite builds that I've seen when it comes to the Maximus Glacial board that we have in terms of the Z690. It had just an overall look and feel that was really polished, looked beautiful, and just, I think, you know, top notch in terms of just the overall execution. It really kind of hit that mantra and that focus of less is more. I love the overall aesthetic choices that were made in terms of how the angles and the lines were done on this, and overall it's just a stunning build. So I think it speaks for itself. If you guys take a look at it right here, you can see a really fantastic kind of layout where you've got the Z690 Glacial board in there, some really nice, beautiful, clean runs. And I really love the fact that here you're letting the hardware just kind of shine, right? We spend a huge amount of work and design and effort when it comes to kind of the design idea on our products. And here you can see that he really kind of respected those lines in that design and effort, because here you're letting the board really show off that design work, right? Where you're kind of just having soft, clean lines that are about focusing functionality, right? Because of course you want to be able to be performant, but at the same time, not necessarily pull away from the hardware, but then also come together and be synergistic. So this is kind of the great combination of everything coming together and being, I think, kind of a better than just the parts, right? It's a sum total experience, which looks fantastic, right? So got the beautiful red and black aesthetic here, where you've got red, black, and then kind of the chrome and silver all tying together, which just looks stunning here. I love the choice to go with a purposeful dark opaque fluid, which just looks fantastic here. You can see that really cleanly. And of course, beautiful photography by Kevin also, because the pictures really help to have this shine. But love this run, this just beautiful bend right here, man. Credit where credit's due, because that's a tough bend. And then this beautiful bend right here that comes back, simple, clean, effective, and just beautifully done. Definitely one of my favorite builds that I've seen in a while, and also one of my absolute favorite builds. Different than what Snef did with the Glacial build, but Snef's approach was absolutely stunning too. But I love the openness of really just showcasing the Glacial board in this. So here, another angle, fantastic right here, where you can see, of course, the EK Vidar fans, the P stream. This is all tightly integrated and also not going overboard. There's not all this excess of radiators. We'll talk a little bit about, because the system is being used more of an office productivity where it doesn't need huge kind of separated loops and everything like that, but that one system is going to be able to be well cooled and managed. And I think that's the also other beauty of really kind of this well done system right here that I really, really like. Beautiful cables. I mean, those cables are stunning. And of course, it would make sense from Titan rig, right? Love that. Just kind of swoop right here to the back. Clean cables right there. Clean cables right there. That run is just beautifully done right there. I'd love to know if you were able to do that in one shot, because that is definitely a tough bend. And then you add the lighting, bam, just look at that, stunning. It just lights it up, and again, really shows off the beauty of highlighting the back plate, that bend, that run, and then the board's design, right? And there you go. That's a fantastic build. I absolutely love that. It's just a fantastic way to show off this Glacial setup and this overall build. It's just beautifully done. And there you can see that great photography in that setup from his garage. What do you guys think? Definitely one of my favorite builds that I've seen in terms of just simplicity, layout, and aesthetic focus, purposeful design, and just skilled expertise. At putting together a system. It's really beautiful. Yeah, I would love to know how many attempts with that been, right? So let's go ahead and just take a look here at Kevin's submission form, and we'll see how things go through here. So, um, does the build have a theme? It was clean and designed around the Maximus Extreme Glacial motherboard. 3 words to describe the build is clean, red, and refined, which I would 100% agree with. Does the build have a name? Yes, the Titan 3. Let's see core components right here. So we've got the Maximus Z690, essentially Extreme Glacial right there on this board. Or actually, I'm sorry, this should be, yeah, Maximus 3. So this is a Z590 Glacial. Sorry, so this is the Z590 Glacial. 128 gigabytes of memory in there, 3600 megahertz, an 11900K, and a 3070 ASUS graphics card in there from our TUF Gaming lineup. He's got 2 A50 Pro 2 terabyte M.2 SSDs that are on there as well. And let's also, let me see right here, 850 watt Seasonic Prime power supply in there, the Ultra Titanium, Mod 1 custom cables, and of course those Mod 1 cables, absolutely stunning. Some of the absolute best cables you can possibly get in terms of the aesthetics and the quality are just top notch. Let's see, pump reservoir combo. It's pretty much almost, I think, all the water cooling hardware is all EK. So that's complementary, of course, to the Glacial board that we have in there. So we've got the Quantum Kinetic in terms of kind of pretty much all that setup. And also the PETG tubing is also EK. And then we got the EK compression fittings. Yeah, it's pretty much all EK water cooling hardware across the board, including, of course, the Coolstream SE radiator that's on there. And then we've got the Budar fans that are also on there. And the backplate and the block also from EK for the graphics card. So stunning. And then that's all inside of the Yule Beast lithium open air chassis. About $7,000 for the total cost in terms of the system. He's most proud of the tubing layout. Anything that he would change about the build. I plan to do some customization on the PSU shroud, but he ran out of time and needed to be able to deliver the build. That would have been interesting to be able to see what he might have maybe done in terms of the shroud. I guess you could maybe have done something right here. I still think it looks beautiful, but I could see where, bringing his experience and expertise in customization, you could have definitely done something that might have been interesting, but it still looks fantastic. Overall time frame took about 25 hours. Let's see. So the system is predominantly pretty much used for work. It's a crazy kind of overkill work PC that's really about aesthetics, first and foremost performance. So really here you get a great combination, top level performance, really cool aesthetic, quiet operation. So it's a great balance in terms of being kind of a showpiece, desk art, and then being able to run, just office productivity and general kind of use at a very high level, right? Favorite kind of features and functionality is the overall kind of design and aesthetic, the Armory Crate integration to be able to kind of manage all the lighting, and then the OLED display that's on the actual Ultra block that is on the actual Glacial board. Overall, Kevin, man, hats off to you, man. It's a fantastic build, thumbs up, and one of my favorite builds that I've seen on a Glacial series motherboard. And definitely, I think even while it's early in 2022, I think this is going to be a contender for me and definitely one of my favorite builds for the entirety of the year. Beautiful work. Fantastic. So kudos to you, man, and the time and effort to be able to execute this. And again, that run and that bend is absolutely fantastic. So let's go ahead and just wrap that up with a quick showcase and tour here for this build here in terms of Titan 3 from Kevin. Beautiful build, and just an overall fantastic in terms of the overall fit and finish. And just, again, I think goes with the mantra of sometimes, less is more. So overall, very cool, nicely done. And thank you guys so much for joining us for today's stream. So that wraps up our PCDIY live stream. As always, if you guys are interested in finding out more about ASUS hardware, getting some tips and tricks and insights, or just looking for anything in regards to kind of PCDIY hardware setups, information, feel free to go ahead and check out our ASUS PCDIY group. I'll link it right now in the chat. And if not, you guys can also check out the description. And also, I'll update the description with a link to the PCDIY Builder Spotlight. So if anybody wants to drop in their systems for submission, you can go ahead and do it that way. So don't worry, we will get you covered there as well. So that pretty much wraps it up, guys. With that, hopefully everybody has a good Friday, and take care, stay safe and healthy this weekend, and make sure to go ahead and check us back next week for the next PCDIY live stream. So with that, guys, take care, take it easy, enjoy the rest of your day.